We now have to work even more vigorously together jointly to promote expanded opportunities to promote freedom, opportunity, prosperity, and civil society in both of our countries.
환영합니다. 머니투데이 대표이사 강호병입니다. 키플랫폼을 찾아주신 여러분께 깊이 감사드립니다. 2026 키플랫폼은 보신 바와 같이 지난해 영면에 드신 미국의 대표 싱크탱크 헤리티지 재단의 에드윈 퓰러 창립자를 추모하는 영상으로 시작해 보았습니다. 퓰러 창립자께서는 생전에 200회 이상 한국을 방문하신 지한파 지성인입니다. 특히 키플랫폼에는 2017년부터 매년 온라인, 오프라인으로 참여하시며 대한민국의 발전 방향을 함께 고민해 주셨습니다. 이 자리를 빌려 다시 한번 고인의 명복을 빌며 본격적으로 2026년 키플랫폼을 시작하겠습니다. 최근 이란 전쟁을 통해서 우리는 하나의 형식을 목도했습니다. 오랫동안 세계 질서를 지탱해온 미국의 글로벌 리더십과 패권이 더 이상 절대적이지 않다는 사실입니다. 동맹의 결속은 느슨해지고 무엇보다도 미국의 제조업 기반 약화가 전략적 한계로 드러났습니다. 전함과 같은 하이테크 자산의 대량 생산 능력은 과거와 같은 압도적 수준을 보이지 못하고 있습니다. 이는 단순한 군사력 문제가 아니라고 생각합니다. 국가 경쟁력의 근본인 생산력 자체가 흔들리고 있다는 신호입니다. 결국 우리는 지금 2차 세계대전 이후 이어져 온 단일 패권 중심의 질서가 무너지고 각자 도생의 시대, 다시 말해서 패권의 진공 상태에 진입하고 있는 순간을 목격하고 있습니다. 그러나 이 전환기는 위기이자 동시에 기회입니다. 대한민국은 세계 최고 수준의 제조업 경쟁력을 갖춘 보기 드문 나라입니다. 반도체, 배터리, 조선, 자동차, 방산, 석유화학 등 모든 산업을 유기적으로 연결할 수 있는 몇 안 되는 나라입니다. 이 최근 주목받는 이 피지컬 AI는 이 기회를 실행할 결정적 변수입니다. 우리에게는 LG의 엑사원 같은 경쟁력 있는 AI도 있습니다. LG가 우리 제조업 현장에 피지컬 AI 서비스 공급자가 된다면 우리 제조업은 계속해서 세계 최고 수준의 경쟁력을 유지하고 LG 역시 글로벌 시장을 선도하는 AI 기업으로 거듭날 것입니다. 어쩌면 피지컬 AI 시대는 대한민국에게 주어진 마지막 기회일지도 모릅니다. 글로벌 불확실성 속에서 대한민국은 제조업의 AI화를 통해서 경제를 더욱 단단하게 만들고 나아가 우리의 경제 영토를 확장해 나가야 합니다. 단순한 AI 기술의 사용자로 남을 것인가 아니면 새 시대를 설계하는 국가로 도약할 것인가 이제 선택의 시간입니다. 키플랫폼은 바로 그 갈림길에서 대한민국의 길을 함께 고민하겠습니다. 그럼 이제 키플랫폼 메인 앵커 앤드류 브로벨에게 마이크를 넘기겠습니다. 큰 박수로 맞이해 주시기 바랍니다. 고맙습니다.
For years, we told ourselves that the future would be digital, that it would be frictionless and somehow really less dependent on the physical world beneath it. What we are now seeing through energy tension, geopolitical strain, and the AI race itself is that the deeper anxiety is still about fuel, flow, and capacity, and whether the system holds. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrew Robel, Chief Reinvention Officer at Reinvantage, a European reinvention firm focused on structural reinvention, systemic adaptability, and future relevance. This is my 5th time opening the K.E.Y Platform Conference, and I am genuinely delighted to be in Seoul again with you once more. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge once again, with great sadness, the passing of Dr. Edwin Filner, founder of the Heritage Foundation. I had the privilege of knowing Dr. Filner through K.E.Y Platform. He was a trusted partner, generous with his advice, and sharp in his thinking. His commitment, his clarity, and his presence left a strong impression on many of us, myself included, and he will be deeply missed. What we are witnessing right now is in many ways the return of the physical world. As we gather here today, global attention is fixed on the Middle East, where renewed conflict has once again reminded us how quickly energy, logistics, stability can become instruments of pressure. For Korea, just like for Europe, this is not a distant issue. Rising tensions around Iran have already pushed up oil prices, but the deeper concern is more structural. Whether the stability of energy flows themselves can still be taken for granted. Europe knows what that feels like. After Russia's war against Ukraine, the continent went through a profound energy shock. What we are now seeing in the Middle East is another reminder, a second one in just a few years. And it is a reminder that the foundation of the global economy are far more fragile than many of us assumed. These tensions are also testing alliances. Europe and the United States are bound closely through NATO, through economics, and through history, and yet, across trade, security, and foreign policy, it is becoming increasingly clear that Europe and the Trump administration do not always see the world through the same lens. This is also why periods like this need to be read very, very carefully. The biggest shifts rarely arrive as single events. They build through pressure across energy, infrastructure, alliances, capital, and technology, until the wider logic of competition begins to change. And what such moments often reveal is not only disruption, but misreading. Misreading the things we assumed were secure, the dependencies that we underestimated, and the signals that we failed to connect in time. At the very same time, another force is reshaping the landscape, and that is artificial intelligence. But AI, too, is part of this return of the physical world. For all its apparent immateriality, it depends on energy. It depends on computing power, on chips, on data centers, on infrastructure at enormous scale. And AI is no longer just changing how we work. It is changing how we think about industrial advantage itself. AI itself is also changing. We are moving beyond large language models into agentic AI and increasingly physical AI. These are systems that do not simply generate answers, but interact with the real world. For a manufacturing powerhouse like Korea, that raises a profound question. How do we protect industrial strength in a world where the next wave of value may be shaped not only by factories, but by intelligence that is embedded inside them? That is the challenge Europe also faces. We must raise productivity through AI without becoming overly dependent on either American or Chinese technology. The real task is to engage with both in technology and capital and in capability, while still preserving strategic autonomy. Every year I come to K.E.Y platform, I leave with new ideas, new questions, and a sharper sense of what really matters. This year feels exactly the same. It is wonderful to see many familiar faces again, and many new ones as well. K.E.Y platform has built a strong reputation for engaging seriously with the issues that are shaping the world, from geopolitics and economic change to technology and strategy. And this year's focus feels especially timely. The shifting global order, the rise of physical AI, and the search for a new kind of productivity in a far more contested world. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope these next 2 days will be rich not only in insight, but in exchange. And to open this year's conference, we will first welcome to the stage experts from Washington, D.C., who have worked closely with K.E.Y platform over the last few years. They will share their analysis of the changing global order in the aftermath of the US-Iran conflict and what it may mean strategically for Korea and the world. We will then turn to global experts in physical AI, a next-generation field that is widely expected to reshape the industrial landscape. They will explore the opportunities and the constraints, as well as the strategic choices this creates for Korea. I'm really confident that all of you, whether you are shaping policy, leading businesses, studying these issues closely, or simply willing to learn, will find these ideas challenging, informing, and inspiring. And now, let us begin K.E.Y Platform 2026 in earnest. We open with a panel discussion featuring experts in global politics and foreign policy. The session will be moderated by Anthony Kim, who is Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Before we welcome our moderator and the panelists to the stage, let us first watch a video introducing the session. Thank you so much.
Gentlemen, please. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anthony Kim, Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Before we start this morning's conversation, as a person who has spent over 25 years with the late Dr. Edwin J. Fulner, this morning Moni투데이 tributed, I'd like to convey my and Dr. Gardner's sincere thanks to Moni투데이, President of Moni투데이, Mr. Kang, and the Chairman of Moni투데이, Mr. Beck. We truly appreciate. Dr. Edwin Fulner was the founder and longtime president of the Heritage Foundation. I'll just say something very quick. He had a very bad eyesight. He used to wear very thick glasses. Despite his bad eyesight, he had a really far-enduring, long-lasting vision. And that vision was to build nations where freedom, opportunity, prosperity, and civil society flourish. So to him, to Dr. Fulner, South Korea was at the center and front of that journey we're making together. So once again, thank you very much, Moni투데이. And I believe Dr. Fulner is with us today in his spirit and his eternal presence with us. And he used to end his message, either letter or email, something very forward-looking, constructive. He used to say, onward. So our journey together through Moni투데이, ladies and gentlemen, this is an ongoing journey, and we'll move forward and onward. Thank you very much. So with that note, let me quickly switch our gears. This morning's conversation will be very much like a speed dating. You saw the video. Too many things are happening around the world, and those many things are affecting South Korea in terms of its business decision, policy-making process, and everything. So this morning, we are privileged to have three experts from Washington, D.C., who can share with us really what's going on and what needs to be thought through and what we can do together. Here we means United States and South Korea. So this will be, it's not about complaining. This session will not be about complaining. This session will be about finding practical solutions together. So I'm not going to get into each renowned expert's wonderful profiles and everything. You can see their amazing achievements in this brochure. So let me quickly get into the conversation you deserve. The format will be following. I'll first invite three individual speakers we have for very short opening remarks, about 3 minutes, to talk about their individual organizations they represent and the perspectives from their stands. And then we will get into segments of conversations that may be very relevant to our audience here today in terms of business outlook, political outlook, but more than anything else, perhaps geo-economic landscape. So to my fellow panelists, I'm not your audience, and your audience is right here. So please, let's get engaged. I'll go with Dr. Niall Gardner first in terms of our sitting order. Why don't you share your perspectives and a little bit about the Heritage Foundation to our audience?
Well, thank you very much, Anthony, and thank you to Moni투데이 for hosting us for this very important conference here in Seoul. And we're delighted to be here visiting from Washington, D.C. And the Heritage Foundation is at the very heart of the policy-making process in the United States, at the heart of the world's superpower. The Heritage Foundation makes policy recommendations to the executive branch of the United States government, including to the White House, to the President, and also we make policy recommendations to the United States Congress. And we play a key role really in helping to shape the vision and strategic thinking of the world superpower. And as Anthony mentioned, there's no doubt about it, these are immensely challenging times, dangerous times for the world. And as we speak today, the United States is engaged, of course, in a war against the Iranian regime in Tehran. And so we are actually at a time of war at this moment with extremely high stakes. And it's our view at the Heritage Foundation that American leadership is absolutely vital on the world stage. We need a United States that is going to stand up in the defense of the free world, that is going to actively lead in the free world. And we are against the idea of a United States that retreats from the world, that is isolationist, that is withdrawn from the world. And we believe in a strong and powerful America on the world stage, in the defense of liberty, in the defense of freedom. And also we believe in a United States that actually stands together with our key allies. And that includes South Korea. And the Korean people really are at the forefront, the front line of freedom in Asia. And the achievements of the Korean people over the last few decades has been an inspiration, I think, to the entire free world. And the Korean people really represent the flame of freedom here in Asia. And the achievements of the Korean people have been absolutely incredible over the course of the last few decades. And so the US-South Korean alliance is absolutely vital, we believe, for the future of Asia, for the future of the free world. And when the United States works together with its key allies, including South Korea, the world is a far better and a far safer place. And certainly our message today from the Heritage Foundation is that we must stand together as allies and partners against a whole host of adversaries on the world stage, from China to Russia to Iran to North Korea. And the strength of our partnership based upon freedom and liberty is really at the very core of what the free world is all about. So it's an honor to be here in South Korea today to speak to you all, and I look forward to a very robust and timely discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. Really appreciate it. We'll get into more specific subjects of the conversation.
Well,
Torchi, welcome back to Korea, I should say.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Moni투데이, and it's good to be here in person because the last 2 years I was on the screen. I've recently joined the America First Policy Institute after many years on Capitol Hill, most recently with the Congressional Executive Commission on China. And for those of you who don't know the America First Policy Institute, it is situated on the right side of the spectrum, like Heritage, and we share a lot of common positions, but it was founded in 2021 after the end of the first Trump administration, and generally it's perceived as being somewhat adjacent to the administration, putting forward policy prescriptions as well. But I'm not speaking for the administration, or even I'm just speaking on my own account here. And I was brought on to head up the China policy, and more broadly Asia-Pacific at AFPI. And I do want to say, how do we think about China? I think it's important not to think of it simply as an economic rival, though it is that, not simply as a strategic rival, though it is that, but as a systemic one. In other words, it wants to change really the entire post-war American-led order and replace it with one of its own devising, with it as the hegemon. And my friend Andrew, his remarks I think were very good. I do differ a bit though in this idea of equidistancing. America first does not mean America alone. What it does mean is that America, there's no other country that can lead as America can. And as we know from our history and that bond that we have with the Korean people is one that was really forged in blood, our alliances. My father in 1953 was going to come to Korea, but that's when the armistice was signed. So we have that deep relationship there. And how we think about China and how we think about China and AI, it very much is a question. Is it going to be a DeepSeek led world or one that is more open? I argue with ChatGPT sometimes because sometimes the arguments that it puts forth are yeah, not quite right. And have a different perspective. But the importance of AI, when you think about the next generation, how it's going to be of students are going to be trained in AI, their worldview and their understanding of history is going to be shaped by that. And if you look at the Chinese Communist Party's platform, this document number 9 in 2012, that is coterminous with Xi Jinping, it says that we cannot have what they call historical revisionism. The Communist Party of China has to combat that. Well, what that means is their control of history and the narrative shaping. And that's a very different world from the world that we're used to, where we do value freedom, freedom of expression, where we do value democracy. So I think it's a very interesting time to have this, this conference, and it's very important, and I'd like to thank you. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Piero. So basically what we are doing for their initial remarks is setting the stage for our conversations. And Piero, really, indeed, good to have you in person rather than via video.
Yeah.
We really like this people-to-people conversations and engagement. And given the upcoming visit by President Trump to China next month, I'm going to come back to you about some specific questions on China, South Korea's kind of interaction with Beijing, and also the relevance of Taiwan in a broader context. Now, great to see you again, Danny Meza. You and I, we always see each other, not in Washington, D.C., but in the great city of Seoul. So again, many thanks to Money Today. Niall and Piero, they talked about the importance of U.S.-Korea partnership. America first is not America only or America alone. Your organization, Global Business Alliance, I mean, we are truly talking about something more practical.
Yes.
And let us know what kind of organization that is, and based on your previous time in the administration and everything, just briefly, just share your perspectives with the audience.
Sure, and Anthony and panelists, thank you for having me today, Money Today. It's always a pleasure to be here. So I am the Director of Trade Policy at the Global Business Alliance, and the Global Business Alliance is an organization that has been around for over 30 years, and it's made up of member companies that are all headquartered overseas in partner and ally countries. We don't have a specific sector, so we represent defense industries, automakers, chemical companies, and really what we've been working through in this, with this administration is how we marry up the America First trade policy that the White House has announced with the America First investment policy. I think what we help our member companies do is we advocate for non-discriminatory treatment between foreign investors and U.S. companies. We really bring expertise to policymakers on how to increase investment in the United States in strategic sectors, and really provide a sort of geopolitical analysis of where we are and where industry would like to go, so we can get to those industries of the future.
Great, great. So now we're going to dive into some more specific subjects that may be of great interest to you. Obviously, this panel conversation is for you, not for me or not among ourselves. Dr. Gardner, you are a well-demanded foreign policy expert in Washington, D.C., and you travel around the world. You're in Italy, you're UK, you go to UK very often, you go to Japan, and over the past years, especially since 2025, one of the key questions we've been getting through our trips and welcoming visitors, the key question from our friends and allies basically is, what's really going on in Washington, D.C.? Very quickly, but very concisely, could you share the temperature and the direction of the wind of the second Trump administration? I mean, I used to say this is more or less organized chaos. It's better than President Trump's first term, but it's still a lot of factors are flying around. I want to say, by the way, as a disclaimer, and none of us is affiliated with the administration. So this is purely our informed perspective coming from our individual capacity. We are not here to represent or defend Washington, D.C. or Trump administration. So with that, Niall, could you share some more specific perspectives? What's really happening in Washington, D.C.? You talked about leadership, importance of leadership in your opening remarks. What else can you add?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anthony. And we visited a number of countries last year, and I was actually in The Hague for the NATO summit in June last year, and also I was in Anchorage, Alaska for the Trump-Putin summit. And so I saw firsthand President Trump's approach to American leadership, and it was very clear at the NATO summit that President Trump wanted to be the champion of the NATO alliance. And so I think there's a misconception that President Trump does not believe in international alliances, or that he believes in an America alone kind of foreign policy. That's simply not the case. I mean, this is a president who is very forceful, he's very tough in his approach. And I've been in a number of meetings with President Trump discussing foreign policy issues. And with President Trump, he is somebody who is a very unique, I think, American leader. We haven't seen a US president like Trump since Ronald Reagan. And he believes firmly in this idea of American greatness, in American strength, the projection of American might and power on the world stage. But that doesn't mean abandoning American alliances. And we saw that at the NATO summit in the Netherlands last year, which was a demonstration of, I think, real American power, but also a willingness for the entire alliance to come together, actually, and increase defense spending. And at the same time, I think the president, on the one hand, he is a president who is fully prepared to use American military power and force. And we're in the middle of a war right now against Iran. He's also a president who wants to advance peace as well. And he's always willing to negotiate and to try and bring about peace without war. But he always backs up those negotiations with immense military power. We're seeing that right now with the Iran war, which militarily actually so far has been a very successful military operation. And it's a demonstration of the projection of American military might and power. But at the same time, the president is holding out the opportunity for negotiations and for a peaceful outcome, provided the Iranian regime agrees to end its nuclear program and opens up the Strait of Hormuz, which has a direct impact, of course, upon South Korea. And the reality is that we cannot allow a nuclear-armed Iran that would hold the world to ransom. We simply cannot allow that. War is very unpleasant. No one wants war. But I can tell you it's going to be 10 times, 100 times worse if Iran has a nuclear weapon and uses it. And so this is what the United States is attempting to prevent right now. And this is why President Trump is fighting against the Iranian regime, not only on behalf of the United States, but on behalf of the entire free world, to prevent a nuclear catastrophe that could happen in the next decade or 2 decades if Iran becomes a nuclear power.
Thank you, Niall. You touched upon primarily security dimension. I want to invite Danny to add economic side, basically economic security, supply chain. Niall mentioned that obviously President Trump's style is a bit more proactive, even more aggressive. From your perspective, because you deal with a lot of business engagement, economic interaction, do you see the same pattern, sort of the same style of President Trump's engagement? Niall's main point was that this is not the isolationist president. He is very much engaging one. How do you see it from business economics perspective?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. I think it's interesting because I think the U.S.-Korea alliance has known the post-World War II economic order, and you really haven't seen too much of a challenge to the economic order. And the one thing I think globally we all faced was the COVID pandemic, and I think that really shook a lot of thinking into manufacturing, supply chains, what is vital for individual country and countries of the world, what is vital for our partners and allies. And I think what I see out of this White House is a certainty that there are certain strategic industries that need to come home. if we want to build the economic and continue building and contributing to the economic order of the future, we have to have certain industries at home. And this administration has chosen the use of tariffs to do that, and using tariffs as a negotiation tactic to get into trade agreements and really start to tackle some of the root sort of economic causes of global trading imbalances, so that the benefits of trade flow equally across the economic world.
Mm-hmm. We are adding more dimensions here.
Yeah.
Piero, you have a unique dimension here. None of us actually spend any time other than meetings and visiting. We never worked on the Hill, but Piero, you spend quite a time advising members of United States Congress. In the United States, obviously, presidency, executive branch is important, but congressional role is also important. Before we get into China issue, don't talk about China yet. Mm-hmm. From your perspective, what could you add to what Niall said, what Danny said in terms of this security, economic interaction coming from the executive branch, president himself, versus sort of congressional kind of perspective? Do we still have this back and forth power balance, or is it more tilted toward the executive branch?
Well, I think, thank you, and I thank both for your remarks that I think hit on a number of very, very important points. President Trump in many ways is sui generis. I mean, he really is a very forceful personality, and he does, I think, sets an agenda that is not just a global one that we have to respond to, but also for Congress. We have a situation now where both houses are Republican, and generally, I think, have been deferential to the president and his agenda. Even in some places where there may be some disagreement, you look at, for example, TikTok, and how the Trump administration has interpreted the TikTok legislation too, where we might see Congress sort of in the future, maybe after the midterms, reasserting its interpretation there. The midterm elections should be interesting. It is if there is a change in power in the House, it is my hope that the relationship remain productive and not get into a cycle of impeachment. I think many of just to touch on China a bit, because I think it is relevant in the upcoming trip that is planned now for May, I think the president's short-term objective here is to try to calm the economy and not to have another issue, economic issue vis-a-vis China arise before the midterms. And I think it's also in China's short-term interest as well to avoid economic turmoil, Xi Jinping's interest there as well. I think long-term, though, the vision that's set forth in the National Security Strategy Memorandum, even if it doesn't mention China explicitly, or as explicitly as some people would like, it very much is present. And that's why it talks, for example, of reindustrialization, reindustrializing America. We saw the ship here that from the shipyard here in Korea. In all likelihood, America cannot onshore all of the industry that has been lost there, and that's why friendshoring, that's why Korea, Japan are so important to that, to these industries, and that's also why we cannot go alone. So it very much, I think, is a vision that is yes, America first, with America's indispensable leadership, but not America alone. America together with our allies, and certainly South Korea plays a very important role in that.
Thank you, Piero. By the way, for the information of our audience, our conversation here this morning is not at all scripted. So our panelists, they don't know what kind of question I'm going to give them. So they are completely subject to my own liberty and my mercy. So I may try to up the game in terms of giving them more tricky and difficult questions. But so far, I think we're good. I hope you are enjoying our conversations. While I have you, Piero, I want to mention that it's really notable that this Money Today conference always happens in Yeouido. And Yeouido is basically known for financial activities, financial district, and also National Assembly here. Right. So it's a political town as well as finance and business town. South Korea itself, it will have a local election in coming month, around June. Mm-hmm. You already mentioned, you are ahead of curve, the midterm election in the United States. Right. This coming November is a very important milestone. Some people say that may be a test ground for President Trump's policy and achievement. But before we get into that kind of discussion, quickly, Piero, what do you think that driving issues for the midterm election in November? Would that be economic issues or foreign policy issues or combination? Just quickly for our audience.
Well, I think here the foreign policy issues are intertwined with the economic. And it always, that expression, it's the economy stupid, that came up during the Clinton and Bush race. I think it very much depends on economics. And of course, the war with Iran has had an impact on oil prices, the price that we pay at the pump. And that has an outsized impact on how people vote. And I'm sure that's also a concern here in Korea as you go to the polls. So I think if Iran is settled, if there is an agreement there, and if oil prices revert, that you may see a more even race. If that remains unsettled, it probably would accrue to the benefit of the opposition, the Democrats. We just had an interesting ballot question in Virginia, where I live, which sought to redistrict the seats in the favor of the Democrats. And it broke down, just as Virginia has a +3 Democratic advantage, that was the end result. Though the drama is not over because the court has intervened and stayed this map. I think if that map were to go forward, that would give an additional advantage to the Democrats. So this redistricting battle that we're seeing take place in the United States, if people are familiar with that, where states are redrawing the congressional boundaries, could also have an outsized impact on the midterm election results.
Thank you, Piero. Danny, get ready. Before I go to you, I'm going to hit Niall first, but these are all relevant dimensions. I was looking around the world here, the wonderful declaration. I mean, basically, the achievements of Money Today Key Platform Conference over the past, let's say, 12 years or something like that. This is quite an achievement. And every year, the theme of the conference is very timely and fitting. And it's very much important subject we need to pay attention to. And this year's theme is basically BTS, not BTS K-pop, but the breakthrough super productivity. But when you think about super productivity, we need energy. We need a new technology and everything. So Niall, I'm coming back to you with this kind of strange kind of approach. My question to you specifically, you talked about security dimension, the leadership of the Trump administration in terms of really being more muscular foreign policy kind of power. But when you think about foreign policy, this is mentioned by, I think, Piero or Danny. Nowadays, conventional security is national security is economic security, and economic security is energy security. So all these securities are not anymore exclusive, mutually exclusive. They're all intertwined. From your perspective, Niall, President Trump has been very vocal about leadership in American energy dominance, not only revitalizing American capacity at home, but going overseas as well. And you alluded earlier, basically the whole Iran issue is also related to the energy security matters. What could you share with us in terms of this whole energy issue, energy security, and also one of the biggest change from Biden administration to Trump administration is basically policies related to energy security. Any comments on it?
Yes, absolutely. I think the Trump administration has made energy security a #1 priority. And the United States today is increasingly energy independent, energy sufficient, And that's a huge contrast, for example, with our European partners who have been extremely reliant, for example, upon Russian energy over previous decades. And we're also seeing our European friends and allies embracing the whole sort of net zero, green agenda, which has been firmly rejected, of course, by the Trump administration because it views it as fundamentally undermining America's energy security and independence. And I do think the war in Iran has a very important energy dimension, because if we allow the Iranian regime, the Islamist regime, the biggest state-sponsored terror in the world, to operate as the regional superpower in the Middle East, ultimately becoming a nuclear weapons power, this would threaten the energy security of much of the world, actually. And it may not directly threaten the energy security of the United States, because the United States is increasingly self-sufficient, but it's going to threaten the energy security of Europe, of Asia, the entire Middle East. And so what the US is doing today in fighting the Iranian regime actually is in the defense of not only the national security, but also the energy security of all of our friends and allies across the world, including in Europe, including here in Asia. South Korea, of course, has a very big stake in the outcome of this war. And this is a war that is designed to prevent a nuclear Armageddon in the Middle East, to prevent an extremely dangerous regime in Tehran from holding the world to ransom on the issue of energy security. And so all of this is intertwined, and so the stakes are incredibly high. President Trump, in my view, is acting here not only in the US national interest, but also in the interests of the free world, which is why we've got to win, actually, against our adversaries. We've also got to outcompete our adversaries, especially in China, Russia, and across the world. And we have to outcompete our adversaries through free market economics, through free trade. We believe at the Heritage Foundation that free trade between allies is really at the heart of economic prosperity across the world. And that free trading partnership with South Korea is absolutely vital for job creation in both of our nations, and for enhancing overall investment between our two nations and advancing the prosperity of our two countries.
Certainly, energy security matters more than ever, and President Trump is a high energy person. He doesn't like low energy people. I want to say the next two sessions, very relevant to this part of the conversation, AI conversation, and also the importance of Central Asia and Caspian region when it comes down to energy security. So I just want to insert this PR portion. Just stay here. You look for next two exciting sessions as well. Now I'm going to Denny. I want to combine what we've been talking about, but coming to something more focused. That's the US-Korea partnership. Obviously, when people nowadays talk about US-Korea economic partnership, shipbuilding and energy and SMR, nuclear, everything. But I want to ask you, because you are in more, let's say, business side, in the private sector side, as we discussed, Global Business Alliance, you get a lot of visitors coming to Washington, you sit down with them. How do you see this whole AI data center interaction? I mean, there's a strong desire from Seoul and Tokyo. When they do investment in the United States, we want to be part of this energy dimension. How do you see Korea has been making inroads into the United States in this domain of AI, data center, and SMR?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. I think over the past several years, you've really seen Korea as a leader in sort of the next sort of generation technologies, and the industries of the future. And when you see that between its own auto manufacturing capability, its semiconductor manufacturing capability, its shipbuilding manufacturing capability. You really see that it has the necessary elements to be a sort of at the heart of global competition. And what we're seeing, as Anthony mentioned, that increasingly, I think the industries of the future, the way they're sort of intertwined, is really right at the nexus between economic and national security. Shipbuilding is now a matter of national security. Semiconductors and the development of the next level technology is now a matter of national security. The data centers and the investments that you're seeing throughout the United States is really, particularly with its allies and partners in AI and the next level, is to really make sure that you have reliable partners in the industries of the future, and creating a supply chain that is free of manipulation, whether that's old-fashioned energy or the new sort of technologies of the future, is really critical to continued economic growth.
That actually gives me a very nice introduction to next question that's going to Piero. At the center and focus of this whole national security, energy security, economic security conversations in Washington over the past, let's say, 5-6 years, undeniably, it's China. Now I'm getting into China question, obviously. In Washington, obviously, there's a Democrat and Republican, but if there's one word that can unite Republican and Democrats, then maybe also China. And you've been analyzing, following trend and patterns of China over the past decades, obviously in a broader strategic context. So now it's your prime time to share your real informed perspectives. What's really going on in terms of the United States and China relationship? President Trump has been really saying that, we're gonna do something about it. And now he has this very important trip going to Beijing next month. What do you see potential kind of a roadmap in terms of U.S.-China relationship, and how real? I mean, is it going to be a short-term kind of a phenomenon, or do you see this whole U.S.-China, let's say, not decoupling, but let's say reconfiguring the relationship, economic, security, energy, all dimensions? Right. How do you see it?
Well, I think I already addressed some of what I saw as the short-term impact of the summit between President Trump and General Secretary Xi. But I think long-term that competition, that systemic competition remains. And if you look at in China's desire to become hegemon, I think mistakes were made, the passive voice. But back in the 1990s, just a few years after the Tiananmen massacre, we sought to engage China. The idea was that you could bring China into the global economic order, and it worked towards China's accession in the WTO in the early part of this century. That, I think, was a fundamental mistake because it misunderstood the nature of China's economic regime and strategy. You cannot have, and we all are free traders, and I think that point that you made, free trade among allies and like-minded nations, is very important. But when China entered the WTO, you've essentially invited a predatory mercantilist economy that subsidizes not just industries, but state-national champions, that steals intellectual property, and that utilizes forced enslaved labor to always win on price, to give it a comparative advantage on price. I think we saw how the US and Korea, Ford Motor Company, tried to partner with two Korean companies in coming up with a battery and lost out to the Chinese competitor, again, based on price. And a portion of that is because of the utilization of forced and suppressed labor in the Chinese supply chain. So I think that, and we have to, with energy, it's important. Yes, the Trump administration has emphasized fossil fuels, where we do have dominance unlike the previous administration. Yes, we all want clean energy, but the emphasis on electric vehicles, you're creating another dependency on China. They already have, in a number of areas, for example, the processing of rare earth magnets, which is significant because that's used in munitions. So the depletion of munitions that we see both in the Iran war and also with regards to Ukraine is a factor in China's favor. I think the Trump administration has reset that. You can understand Venezuela and Iran as a way really to control the potential flow of oil. The Trump administration said it would continue to sell oil to China, but not at a subsidized price, as had previously existed, not to do these trades with these regimes that are brutal and suppress their own people, as had existed, but to reset that. And so that, I think, is also a very important nexus between energy and this geostrategic thing. I think one thing that's very important, you mentioned SMRs, the small modular reactors, and Korea's leadership in this is very important. If we do want clean, green energy, it's going to be by this new, well, it's actually old technology, molten salt technology, but it's clean. It doesn't have the half-lives that are measured in centuries. And they're small and containable. I think that's very important. I also think LNG and where you source LNG is very important, not just for Korea, but also for Taiwan. If it comes from Qatar, you're going to encounter these choke points, and we see the reliance on that as a source of LNG. If it comes from the United States, it also comes with the guarantee of the U.S. Navy in terms of delivery and stability. So I think that's also another important point. So it's all interrelated. Energy, economic security, national security, the prosperity of not just the United States, but also our allies, including Korea.
Thank you, Pierre. I'm glad that you touched upon Taiwan, although briefly. I mean, I'm sure we'll find another occasion to talk more about the Taiwan dimensions. But for today, I only have two questions for the remaining time. One of the key things here in Indo-Pacific when it comes down to working with the United States, economic domain, energy domain, China, Washington, we are always interested in how do we make it more functional in terms of United States, South Korea, Japan, trilateral relationship. Something more practical. How can you make it? And Dr. Fulner, the late Dr. Fulner, had been talking about this issue long time. But obviously, Korea, Japan, always something. But I think the overall direction has been something very positive. And last year, President Trump visited both Japan and South Korea, a good relationship. And the Trump administration earlier this year mentioned that, I wouldn't name which official, you can find his name, but basically describing South Korea as a model ally, something very much look for. How do you see the future of U.S., South Korea, Japan kind of interaction at this important juncture? A lot going on in Iran and Middle East and everywhere, but do you see, just briefly, the real possibility of getting the three of us really closer? Niall, let's go first with you. Quickly.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think one of the most striking developments that we've seen in recent months has been a growing determination by Japan actually to stand up to China, and the Japanese Prime Minister was recently, of course, in Washington and had a very good meeting with President Trump. And so the United States, Japan, and South Korea working together to combat Chinese aggression and Chinese influence in Asia is very important. And China represents, in many respects, the single greatest threat, actually, to the free world at this time. A nation with immense and growing economic and military power, but driven by communist ideology. And communism is fundamentally evil. It has never succeeded in the past. And we've seen that with the collapse, of course, of the Soviet empire. We see that with the tremendous, poverty in North Korea. And Chinese communist ideology is a very grave threat. And we have to, as the free world, we've got to stand up to that. And that includes, of course, our vital allies here in South Korea, also in Japan. And we've got to stand up to China's bullying, its totalitarian ambitions. And we've got to defend the free world. This is really the front line of the free world here in Asia.
Well said, said. Yes. Danny, from, again, econ security perspective.
Yeah, look, from an economic security perspective, I think it's, I think you saw at the end of last year a fairly successful APEC summit where the president was well received here in Korea and, of course, in Japan. I think as sort of leaders in the technologies and the applications of the future, I think it would be well received to have continued leader meetings either at the bilateral or trilateral levels on a pretty regular basis, because I do think that the Asia Pacific is such a dynamic region that that really frequent engagement is going to be a part and parcel to a successful economic or any other priority that an administration might have. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what's really significant is how Japan and Korea now has kind of overcome that, the historical animosity there, and it's very much essential. And I think one thing that's very important to note is the continuity between the initiative that the Yoon administration had vis-a-vis the relationship with Japan that has continued very pragmatically under the Lee administration. And even though we see these sort of, on both sides, this kind of ritual, Prime Minister Takaichi just went to the Akasune shrine the other day, and protests were made, but something that in the past could have become a major incident, really, I think, was treated in a very mature way. And there's this realization that we really do need to stick together, that Japan and Korea, despite whatever history, are really united by a common challenge, and that is, as Niall said, it is communist China. Indeed. Too. I think greater integration of South Korea in regional security. I think also it should be noted that in the Gulf conflict, that South Korea sent missiles, defense systems to the UAE. That's something, that burden sharing, that should be acknowledged, and that is important. I think also my colleague Fred Fleitz and I have talked about, we have a quad with Japan and Australia, the US and India. I don't think we're at the level of having a quint where South Korea joins, and in part that's because India is a little bit ambivalent. But it's good to start thinking about what are some of the regional ways to engage in a multilateral dimension, and to have Korea, the Republic of Korea, as part of that.
I'll give you each 15 seconds to wrap up. This has been really dynamic conversation, but obviously given time limits, we couldn't get into all the relevant factors in greater details, but we look forward to perhaps next occasions. But to wrap up our session, Niall, Piero, and Danny, really 15 seconds, there's a lot of anxiety and nervousness, not only in Korea, but around the world. What would you advise business leaders and others? This is time for what? Like a 15-second wrap-up, maybe.
Yeah, I think 15 seconds is that we are entering a new stage, and we're setting a new economic rules, and any sort of sense that we might go back to an old order quickly is misplaced.
Great point.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that our alliance, our friendship, is one that was forged in blood, and that point that that I learned from my father, that he was 1953 was about to go to Korea, and that at a very young age made Korea different. And our alliance is one that is, I think, unique and is strong and needs to be preserved and strengthened.
Excellent. Dr. Gardner.
Yeah, I would say, you know, don't bet against the United States.
Good point.
You know, the United States is standing up really for the entire free world, and the US-Korean partnership, I think, is absolutely vital for both of our nations. Let's stand together and let's confront our enemies with strength and resolve, and let's be united in our belief in freedom and liberty and our immense, you know, cultural heritage as well that unites these two great countries.
That's a very good summation. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, MoneyToday Key Platform. The key word, if I may highlight, is key platform. This is a platform for adding and multiplying good ideas, quality people, quality engagement. We look forward to our next sessions and perhaps many more years to come. But for now, please join me for thanking our great panelists for the great conversation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
A big thank you to all our panelists for a rich and timely discussion. There are clearly many challenges ahead, but conversations like this also remind us that it would be a mistake to see the present only through the lens of crisis. Every shift in the global order creates pressure, but it also creates openings. And the real question is, who is able to recognize them early and act on them intelligently? With that, let us turn to our next topic, physical AI. We will begin with Professor Jay Lee of the University of Maryland, who also served as vice chairman of Foxconn. He will share his perspective on the reality and potential of physical AI and on the strategic opportunities it creates for Korea. After that, we will move into a broader discussion on the growth potential of physical AI, as well as its limitations. This panel brings together Professor Ing-Ming Chen from Nanyang Technical University in Singapore, Professor Mohan Rajesh Elara from the Singapore University of Technology and Design, and Dr. Sungo Cho, Director of the General Center for R&D Investment Strategy at KISSTEP. This session will be moderated by Professor Hye Sung-yoon of Hanyang University School of Law, who is also an expert in AI policy and regulation. Again, before we welcome Professor Lee to the stage, let's take a look at the video introducing the topic.
Good morning. 안녕하세요. Thank you for inviting me to share with the audience about industrial physical AI. I think I choose this topic for a special reason because we have to focus on AI on the critical economical growth, not just technology venture. So today, I think we will share with you what I see physical AI, especially for South Korea, is journey to the next generation of industry. So there are several topics. One is about how AI has been transformed, right? And what's industry AI? What is a physical AI? What's industrial physical AI? Finally, the most important thing is the impact to your bottom line, GDP, your global competitiveness, right? Beyond trade. So let's look at this. So my key message today is that physical AI has been coined, I think, in Silicon Valley, but not the purpose of AI, for the purpose of a new wave of give AI the capability to add into some mechanism like a drone, like a robot, like a vehicle. But problem is, our society, have a bottom line. We have a legacy. Especially industrial physical AI, we have to drive economic impact revolution. That's productivity. Especially for our industry, which we have a very strong legacy already in the electronic industry, semiconductor industry, automotive industry. Three industries together, probably over 30% of Korea GDP. All right? Then with that, so you have already 30 million workforce with 4.5 million in manufacturing. So what is the power you can leverage to harvest those massive legacy data to drive to the next level of KPI? So first, let's look at AI transformation. I think let's calibrate. So where we are. So AI generated by human, 1955. Today, if you look at most of AI, has a three trend. Human also made a machine. Machine made our product. Product generate many, many things we do. So today's most popular AI is you and I. We came from voice recognition, image processing, biometrics, handwritten zip code, and all the webs, your internet, your Facebook, right? All the legacy, Wikipedia, textbooks, all the human generate data. That's the majority of today's AI's large language model come from, probably 99%. But human being, we also made a machine. But machine data, AI, just about the beginning. I've been working on this field for 35 years. Well, if we conservatively, probably 45 years, right? But those data, they are not open source. We have domain source, the tested knowledge. We don't share sometimes. Eventually, most of AI today, we train on the open source data. Those are the data belong to traditional, we call the human generated. But of course, when data center become a computer, that's where one of a company always say, oh, I can sell more GPUs. But that's the purpose. So eventually, platform is what AI is today, platform, right? The platform is a new way of thinking about AI. And of course, agent will be the next common things for all the fundamental, just like when iPhone was introduced, all the apps start coming out. Today, almost nobody don't use apps, right? But today, if you think about 20 years ago versus 20 years from now, you'll be surprised. There's a lot of agents, from travel agent, right? From your doctor agent, etc. So let's look at the thing. So that's, of course, open source and electricity and generation, ecosystem, etc. Those are the key. But there are three passes. We call it 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, D, E, right? When I say AI, there are three elements. They are fundamental. Algorithm, big data, compute, ABC. That's called AI. So when we're talking about data center and electricity, naturally became the first path. One. That's a what? $500 to $700 billion investment. This is AI infrastructure. 60% is about, we're talking about compute, including server, GPU, chips, right? Then you have like storage and memory. Then your 40% is you're talking about facility, real estate, and HVAC, power generation, etc., etc. But this is what we're talking about today. So this area depends heavily on energy, right? So worldwide has about 3,300 to 3,500 gigawatt per year we use. When you say gigawatt, what do you mean gigawatt? Each gigawatt, 1 gigawatt equivalent to 1 nuclear power plant output. You think this way, right? Can power 800,000 houses. That's what 1 gigawatt. So worldwide, right, use about 80 to 120 gigawatt for data center today. North America, about 30 to 40 gigawatt. And AI is about 5 to 10 gigawatt today. But next few years, maybe reach 30 to 40 gigawatt, even more. South Korea is using about 60 to 70 gigawatt electricity, right? But that's the scale we're talking about. Now, second path is ABC same, but third one is a device and edge. We're talking about AI glass, AI phone, AI notebook, AI PC, right? AI car, of course, typical EV that is. So these are called AI products. These things really talking about battery and safety, security, regulation, etc. So this is naturally coming. Eventually we'll see more and more and more AI, right? AI agent embedded into speech, real time, and not just translation, but also keywords. But the third path is very important for today, which is a domain. It's a very important domain and ecosystem. This is where impact you as industry. How to build domain AI, industry AI, eventually drive a new growth. You need speed, you need scale, right? And how you drive to some extent standard. You do have an extra one, which is one of a Korean LLM, but certainly how do you drive that as a standard as like other countries as well? So to me, that's fundamentally we look at why we're doing it here. Human being, we create the wealth globally by making manufacturing. So there's a very famous way of saying that to live well, a nation must produce well. That's what famous saying. Manufacturing is to produce wealth. Eventually, we start from learning something. Eventually, we do lean, TPM, Kaizen, Six Sigma. Eventually, we make to prevent, using smart control, smart algorithm. Today, we have a lot of legacy data, legacy invisibles. We don't even know why they exist. We do try and error all the time. Eventually, that's where the future data can speak. But data doesn't have a meaning unless you analyze them. So that's where blue area is what I see. The AI can really drive those changes, right? Why we're talking about AI today? Because we have an aging workforce today, aging population. We lost a lot of skillful workers because of retirement. Young people lost interest in those legacy fundamental industry work. Manufacturing, for example. You have a very hard time to attract young people. So eventually, so what is industry AI and physical AI and industry physical AI, which is the one I want to leave with you today. So industry AI is what I've been working on for many. I wrote the first book in the world on industrial AI in 2020, right? This is called the Data-Driven Industrial System. We use a domain-centric system, design many things for the past decades, centuries. And we start using a lot of data to design things, discover new material faster, and to discover new drugs faster, right? Eventually, it's prediction optimization. That's industrial AI. But physical AI is a new acronym which basically embody AI to the robots, drone. You can move the environment, unknown space. But doesn't mean you have accuracy. Doesn't mean you have a repeatability. Doesn't mean you have a reliability. Doesn't mean you have a safety. It doesn't mean that. It's just autonomy. But autonomy to what? What's the purpose? But industry physical AI, we refine those. Thus, you can sense, think, act, learn, continuously improve self-improving resilience, right? So we have a wind turbine. We know how to change the angle by generating more power, right? The ship cruising the ocean, we can change the angle of the navigation. We can save a fuel. Aircraft engine, airplane flying, we know how to save a fuel. Those are industrial systems. So eventually we're talking about this is what we do today in our center, Industrial AI Center. We deal with a large-scale, highly connected, highly complex engineering system, like all the aircraft, right, fly in the air. And wind turbine, there's a 250,000 wind turbine worldwide, bulldozer, EVs, right? And the train and the fabs, and modern fabs, two nano fabs, cost about $20 billion to build, right? Advanced EUV costs about $100 million to $300 million. There's 10,000 sensors. But how you analyze those things, complicated system. So eventually, we call the data issue. We have a lot of data-rich environment, which we do, like semiconductor. There's data-rich. Unfortunately, the complexity of data, not easily for you and I to understand unless you have a discipline to understand. We also have a lot of industry, they are data poor. The data is broken. Data is totally not high quality. Eventually, we'll talk about 3B issue. Background's missing, baseline's missing, and broken. I call 3B. So in this case, that's where the bottom line barricade our progress in future AI. So when data volume is less on the left side, you can do design experiments, which in semiconductor where people are still doing this, right? But when data volume is highly complex on the right side, there's no way you can do try and error. That's exactly what modern foundry is. You have to physically move people from the fab side to the data room, understand the thousands of sensors, how you model it, how you analyze it, how you predict the recipe, how you calibrate the machine. Eventually, that's what this topological system is. So, but unfortunately, data is sometimes useful, but not very useful, because data has no background, no baseline, no label. So therefore, data is not useful. Useful, not usable. But of course, you should not continue to collect data that are not useful, not usable. Unfortunately, 80% data, they are useful, but not very usable, right? So we take 800,000 data set from TSMC data sets. We found only 170,000 data sets available which are usable. And you can use it to drive the yield of the wafers. You don't need 800,000 data sets. But that's eventually create a knowledge graph. It's create legacy of domain knowledge, right? So by doing that, so physical AI, we're talking about physical. Physical AI is like it's an AI plus embodiment of something, right? So you have robots, humanoid robots, drone, EVs, machine, the others. But I think in many ways, when people look at the physical AI, most people think, oh, just a human and robot walking. That's not physical AI, right? But of course, you can think this way. Most mature platform is an EV platform. EV is an electrified vehicle, has more sensors. Your phone has about 10 to 12 sensors. EV has about 100 to 150 sensors, depending on model, right? Airplane have 1,000 sensors, but those sensors actually can label data dynamically. Eventually, that's where the platform can be. But Tesla has built about 8 million EVs today since 2008, right? But eventually, there are only 40, 50,000 and about FSD, but still take a long time. Robotaxi can run. But Waymo has a few thousand fleet. That's very limited in terms of what you can learn, can train. So eventually, robotaxi is certainly one example people give a lot of hope, right? So that give it because with 8 million vehicle in the fleet, you can leverage those vehicles which are not used, which they are not in use status, and to become a shared services. That's one thing. But bottom line is how do you leverage from today's level 2 to level 3, level 4 drive, right? That's a very important closed loop intelligence. But that's to me, you have a very good company in South Korea. You're doing very good job in this field. So it could be a very critical economy. So now one thing we want to talk about context engineering. In engineering term, we design a system, we use a system engineering most of the time. We design aircraft, we design a vehicle, we design our power plant, we design our nuclear, but we don't consider context engineering. For example, when ship cruising ocean. Okay, that's it. You do whatever you want. Wait a minute. Airplane fly in air. You just follow the instruction. You fly whatever you want. Not really. You can save a lot of fuel if you do so. So eventually, we're talking about how the context engineering. So physical AI and the physical AI in space, the difference. One is that you don't think first, you do it. Eventually, you learn, you think, and you improve, right? First, you think, you act, think. So there's a learn how to think, which is very important for industrial system. Learn how to think, not think to learn, right? So eventually, to do this, we'll take one example, right? There's different layer of, we say the 4 layers. From sensor layer, how the sensor you perceive. From the think layers, how the model we use to predict based on the known or unknown space. Act, how we physically can drive the, not just movement, but also purpose. What do you want to do? How well can be done, right? Finally, learning group, how to feedback, eventually improve the efficiency. So let me give an example. Let's say with vehicle today, we have a lot of sensor. So we have a Google Map. Google Map does as good as they are, but there's a pothole. Car hit the pothole. The sensor label. So the car behind you, they will know there's a 1 kilometer ahead, there's a pothole, right? So this is what we call this a new way of label data, right? But in the future, vehicle generate lots of data can be labeled, especially for those risks can be predicted, can be prevented. But not based on the preset, the images, or sometimes the A camera, you could even detect those holes. The vehicle, ship cruising ocean, but we can do whatever we want, but there's a wind, weather, and the wave. I call 3W, constant changes. But how do I model my drag force, right? If I can model drag force based on the learning, what I can do, I can change my angle navigation. By doing that, I can save 6% of fuel. In 10 years, I can buy a new ship. That's exactly what we did almost 10 years ago, right? But at that time, people didn't define what physical AI is. But that's the kind of new industry you need to generate. Not define the ship, it's define the saving, define the value, define the benefit for the customers. So eventually, you have a ship cruising the ocean, right? The data generate, you can start building a real-time the model. We call digital twin, but I use a cyber-physical system was a more smart way. To label the data, eventually you can, and the time machine to capture those by adjusting the angle, eventually you know how to save. And other ship can do the same thing. So anyway, now we got a foundry. If you look at modern foundry today, industrial physical AI, what do? You have a lot of sensors in the foundry today, but good engineers, they work in a data room. Data room. 2 nano fab right now, right, is producing the new iPhone. And so there are a lot of data coming out. But how can you take those data from the machine, recipe, calibrate, automatic segment of data, right? Because self-learning twin can provide this quick adjustment. So this is very fundamental. This is the future. The factory engineer going to work in a data room, not physical factory. Data room will have a lot of new skill set. If one thing challenge will be how can you physically segment the data? Human being do try and error. But we are using the AI tool, automatic segment, right? But that's the power. You have a lot of sensor data because the technical was skipped down, but just show you a lot of data from this format. By using this, you want a calibrate machine. You can do try and error, which is PCA, principal component analysis, or you do digital twin approach, right? Very quickly, save time from many, many hours to less 1 hour, even minutes. But that's what you want, right? So finally, this is the journey we've been working on since Intel 25 years ago. We worked with it, and many years we also work Samsung and the other semiconductor industry. So we believe the future semiconductor is going to be very interesting, technologically, also socially, because we're going to change the landscape of workforce. Now let's look at the next, the future manufacturing. How do you make young people? Today, manufacturing is a good tech, good paid job. Tomorrow should be high tech, high paid job. You say, Professor Lee, I don't believe you. Well, this is exactly we have to produce such an industry, right? High tech, high pay. Why? Because we will have a manufacturing data sets generate from machine, from processes automatically. We do continuous machine learning. We can predict the quality before we even make it. We can trace the quality if something wrong. We find the root causes. Eventually, that platform is a new way of we call DNA of manufacturing, right? That's very powerful, called a stream of X, right? With that, for example, you have a manufacturing, you can dynamically separate and the two processes, one's blue, one's orange. After you made it, you found a product no good. But if I do today, during the process, I segment the data, and we can process the data from in different periods to do continuous machine learning. So I generate the relationship to find those invisible label, invisible relationship. Eventually, you can predict and prevent. By doing that, of course, we can put on the one of the things we've done before in the Foxconn early years. So we put a lot of a sensor data, right? So eventually put this in edge devices. But today, you look just a nano. Just a nano is very powerful, obviously. So you can do many other ways we can do. So finally, you can create a smart edge AI devices that run manufacturing, so like a high-tech shop, right? So this gives us a lot of foundation. So now let's look at the final impact, because we have a few minutes, 2 minutes left. There's quite a few impact. The future semiconductor industry, right? You can look at the future foundry. There's a high impact area. As autonomous process control is number one. Lithography and deposition, CMP, et cetera, right? So I'm trying to the future. We look at the future physical AI space. Certainly some winner. I do believe a company in Korea certainly can leapfrog. This is a great space to work on. And thirdly, there are several industries. I'll go through it quickly. For electronic industry, like what you have here, right, you have about almost like a 10% of your GDP and in electronics. You can have a diversified the data stream value and to not just to produce AI, but also from devices and data platform. Eventually, your software you generate can be the great and the new platform for training the new generation workforces. And strategic areas, of course, with time, I would say the future for electronic industry, one big thing will be how to AI-driven adaptive devices, AI in chips, and also AI managing the energy, etc. Automotive industry, certainly you are doing right now. I know Hyundai Motor, the Global Innovation Center in Singapore, has been doing extremely well, trying to generate new kind of vehicles to in urban environment, right, to build. Obviously, there's a mobile, is how do you build the AI-driven and mobility as a service. That's what exactly the future and where you sell the data, right? Data. But the data are going to drive the new discovery of unknown situations. Steel industry is not that big, but still has a fundamental, not just to make steel, but to discover new materials for new lightweight and also better structure and strength. So with that, I will skip because key message. Physical AI is for AI capability revolution. But industrial physical AI is to drive economic revolution. I believe this is what you need to think. Of course, finally, AI is not just to make AI company rich. It's to make our industry rich and resilient. All right? But that is what my message is. I hope this is useful for you to think about it. Thank you very much. Yeah.
바로 시작해도 되는 것 같습니다. 반갑습니다. 안녕하십니까. 저는 오늘 패널 토론의 좌장을 맡은 한양대학교 법학전문대학원의 윤혜선이라고 합니다. 다시 한번 인사드리겠습니다. 오늘 머니투데이의 키플랫폼 주제가 피지컬 AI인데요. 피지컬 AI는 2006년 정말 그 첫 새벽 화두를 새벽을 깨우는 화두가 되었던 것 같습니다. 뭐 정부나 기업, 학계도 모두 피지컬 AI라는 키워드를 이야기하고 있는데요. 저는 오늘 이 패널 토론이 단순히 피지컬 AI의 가능성을 확인하는 자리에 그치는 것이 아니라 좀 냉정하게 피지컬 AI를 들여다보는 자리가 되었으면 합니다. 구체적으로 한국에 진짜 기회가 있는지, 있다면 우리가 무엇을 해야 하는지, 그리고 아직 우리가 직면하기 불편한 질문들까지도 시간이 허락한다면 함께 다루어 보고자 합니다. 오늘 그 이야기를 함께 해주실 세 분을 소개해 드리겠습니다. 먼저 첫 번째 패널이십니다. 싱가포르 난양공과대학교 교수이시고요. 카르틴 공동소장, 트랜스포머 로보틱스, 핸드 플러스 로보틱스의 공동 창업자이신 이밍첸 교수님이십니다. 예, 박수로 환영해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 산업용 로봇과 피지컬 AI 분야의 글로벌 연구를 선도하고 계신 전문가이십니다. 이제 두 번째 패널을 소개해 올리겠습니다. 싱가포르 기술 디자인 대학교 교수이시고요. 라이언스봇 공동 창업자이시고 싱가포르의 국가 로봇 프로그램을 총괄하고 계신 총괄 책임자이신 모한 라주시 엘라라 교수님이십니다. 다시 한번 박수로 이제 환영 부탁드리겠습니다. 우리 모한 교수님께서는 로봇 친화적 인프라와 지능형 서비스 로봇 분야의 전문가이십니다. 이제 세 번째 패널을 소개해 올리겠습니다. 한국과학기술평가원, 이른바 키스텝이라고 하는 기관의 투자 전략 총괄 센터장이시고 한국의 R&D 투자 전략과 피지컬 AI 정책 현장을 직접 설계하고 계신 조성호 센터장이십니다. 박수로 환영해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 세 분 환영하고 이 자리에 함께해 주셔서 감사합니다. 그럼 패널 토론을 바로 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 첫 번째 질문은 과연 피지컬 AI라는 게 무엇인가라는 질문인데요. 오늘 주제가 되고 있는 피지컬 AI라는 용어가 사실 분야마다 다르게 쓰이고 있는 것 같습니다. 그래서 본격적인 토론에 앞서서 세 분께 각자의 분야에서 이해하시는 피지컬 AI라는 개념이 무엇인지 좀 정리를 부탁드리고 싶은데요. 기존의 산업 자동화라는 개념과 본질적으로 무엇이 다른 것인지 이것에 대해서 각자 한 문장으로 정리해 주시고 또 그러한 개념의 차이가 앞으로 국가 경쟁력의 어떠한 부분을 바꾼다고 보시는지 말씀해 주시기 바랍니다. 먼저 첸 교수님께 부탁드리겠습니다.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The translator. Yes, that's right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to bring that. Yeah. Can you repeat your first question again?
Yes.
Sorry.
Do you want me to repeat the first
Yes,
question
that's
again?
right. Yes, that's right. Sorry about that. Yeah.
오케이. 여기 이제 통역기를 가지고 계시지 않으셔서 제가 첫 번째 질문에 대해서 다시 한번 말씀을 드려야 될 것 같은데요. 피지컬 AI의 정의에 대한 문제, 개념에 대한 문제입니다. 피지컬 AI라는 개념이 기존 산업 현장에서의 자동화하고 본질적으로 어떻게 다른 개념인지 교수님이 이해하시는 피지컬 AI 개념을 한 문장, one sentence로 정리해 주시고 그러한 데피니션이, 그러니까 그 개념의 차이가 이제 국가 경쟁력 관점에서 어떠한 그 변화를 가져올 것인지에 대해서 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Yeah. Actually, physical AI will be different from the general AI in terms of it has to be embodied in a physical entity. Yeah. No matter your, like Prof. Jay Lee mentioned, no matter in the EVs or drones or even robotics. Yeah. It need to make thinking and action as well. Yeah. So therefore, in terms of it's a difference from the traditional industrial automation is that it does have the more intelligent capability to adapt to different kind of changes, which is the past industrial automation as a fixed program cannot do.
다음 교수님 부탁드립니다.
So I see that now AI is moving out of the screens as we know, like ChatGPT, Gemini, and another form, to move as embodiments into physical objects. So if we are to see in an industrial context, these are robots, machinery and equipment that we typically know, but now has AI within it. So it senses the environment, senses human interaction, process them, reason and act upon it. And if we are to wonder what type of difference that it make, let's consider a delivery robot, a goods delivery robot within a manufacturing setting. In traditional ways, maybe the last 30, 35 years, we are already witnessing this type of robots that move goods from one point to another point, say point A to point B. These robots follow hard-coded rules. The robot programmer would program, the robot need to move in this way. If somebody is going to block it, the robot will avoid and again reach to the destination B. But what's happening with physical AI is that now the robot is using common sense. The robot is using logic just like people do. So with that, imagine a case. If there is a factory worker who has fainted on the floor, and if a traditional goods moving robot is moving, the robot approaches this person on the ground who has fainted. And the robot would take a closer look with its camera and the laser scanner. And the robot would say, oh, that's an obstacle. And I find that's a static obstacle. So I'm going to avoid it and move from point A to point B. And this is how traditional robots work. But now, with physical AI and robots powered by common sense and general intelligence, the robot would take a closer look and would say, oh, that's a person, and the person has fainted. So that means the person needs to have medical attention. So it goes beyond the traditional rules that the programmer wrote for a robot to function, but rather look at common sense and extended logic. So that's going to be very, very powerful, not just in handling an outlier or an edge case like a fainted person, but to more logically use the data and knowledge that has been accumulated over the years. Domain specificity is going to be very, very important because a fainted person for a cleaning robot in a service setting to that in a hospital setting versus in a manufacturing setting is very different. And domain specificity will play an edge in the long term for physical AI. So physical AI is transforming in a very big way. Again, adding to your question on national competitiveness, I see the national competitiveness would focus on three different thrusts. The agility, so how quickly a country moves and implement and integrate these robots. Second is anchoring to existing domain strength, because every country has their own strength. Like South Korea has a very strong position in semiconductor, shipbuilding, manufacturing, chemical industries, and how can this be anchored very quickly, transforming from traditional physical system to physical AI industrial systems. And the third is in terms of being adaptive. Technology now is changing fast, and therefore the policy and the rate at which this adoption happen must be adaptive in nature. So I see that the 3 A's will bring in competitiveness at the national scale.
Thank you. 조성호 센터장님 부탁드립니다.
네, 말씀 잘 들었습니다. 앞서서 이제 리 교수님과 이제 두 분 아주 설명 잘 들었는데요. 제가 생각하는 피지컬 AI는 피지컬 AI 자체가 목적이라기보다는 우리가 궁극적으로 도달하고자 하는 목표에 다가가는 어떤 기술군에 대한 어떤 주목을 받고 있다, 이렇게 지금 생각하는데, 우리가 기존에 이제 자동화는 사전에 정해진 어떤 룰대로 이렇게 이제 반복적인 이 작업들을 더 빠르게, 더 효율적으로 한다면은 피지컬 AI 시대에서는 데이터를 기반으로, 맥락을 기반으로 한 데이터를 기반으로 스스로 판단하고 환경에 맞게 행동을 바꾸고 공정을 실시간으로 최적화할 수 있는 지능형 물리 시스템이다, 이렇게 조금 이제 원론적인 설명을 드릴 수가 있겠는데, 기존의 산업 자동화가 공정과 규칙에 따라서 반복적으로 움직이는 체계였다면은 피지컬 AI는 변화하는 현장 상황을 능동적으로 이해하고 스스로 적응할 수 있는 이제 그런 시스템으로 넘어가는 것이죠. 이 차이는 국가 경쟁력의 축이 설비와 공정에 투자해서 데이터와 지능으로 넘어간다는 걸 이제 의미하게 되는 거고요. 그래서 이제 누가 더 많은 공장을 갖고 있느냐의 게임보다는 누가 더 많은 산업 데이터를 축적하고 이걸 더 지능적으로 활용하는 국가로 변모할 수 있느냐 이런 게임으로 이해할 수 있겠습니다. 결국 경쟁의 본질은 누가 더 많이 생산하느냐보다는 누가 더 똑똑하게 생산하느냐로 이제 이동하고 있는데 그 과정에서는 혁신의 차이가 있다고 봅니다. 과거에는 기술 도입이 개별적이고 단편적인 단절적인 투자였다고 생각을 합니다. 어떤 말인고 하니 제조 혁신을 이루거나 공장의 생산성을 올리기 위해서는 그때마다 필요한 순간순간마다 분절적인 투자가 대규모로 일어났다면은 피지컬 AI 시대의 이러한 혁신은 맥락이 있는 데이터가 누적되어 가면서 지속적인 서스테이너블한 이노베이션을 할 수 있는 시대로 넘어가고 있다. 이 과정에서 한국은 여러 가지 강점들을 현재 갖추고 있고 지능형 산업 생태계로 전환하는 그 중심에 우리나라가 있다고 생각합니다.
네, 감사합니다. 제가 첫 번째 질문만 드렸는데도 정말 그 패널 분들을 훌륭한 분들을 모셨다는 생각이 드는데요. 네, 그 개념 정의 안에서만으로도 공학적인 기술적인 측면뿐만 아니라 정책적인 측면까지도 다 다뤄주셔서 감사합니다. 네, 제가 패널 토론자분들께 말씀을 이제 시간상 정리를 해드리지는 못하겠지만 또 제가 엄청나게 많은 질문을 준비했거든요. 그런데 어쨌든 세 분의 대답을 이렇게 답변을 이제 듣다 보니 핵심 키워드가 지능형이라는 것이고 그 기반에는 데이터가 있다라는 것으로 이제 귀결이 되는 것 같습니다. 그러면 사실 우리나라가 특히 피지컬 AI 분야에 주목을 받는 큰 이유 중에 하나는 또 제조 현장에 많은 데이터가 있기 때문이라고 알고 있는데요. 이 다음 질문은 그래서 이 지점에 있습니다. 과연 이 데이터가 진짜 경쟁력이 될 수 있는 것인지를 여쭤보고 싶은데요. 잘 아시는 것처럼 우리나라는 반도체, 조선, 자동차, 2차 전지와 같은 세계 최고 수준의 제조 현장을 가지고 있습니다. 그리고 정말 이 시간에도 실시간으로 방대한 양의 이제 데이터가 쌓이고 있는데요. 많은 분들이 지금 방금 말씀드린 것처럼 이 피지컬 AI 시대에는 이제 데이터가 핵심적인 이제 경쟁 자산이다, 경쟁력을 갖는 자산이다라고 이제 말씀을 하는데 제가 생각하기에는 데이터가 많다고 해서 자동적으로 경쟁력이 되는 것은 아닐 것 같습니다. 그러니까 기술적으로든 제도적으로든 어떤 조건이 이제 갖춰져야 이 데이터가 실제로 쓸 수 있는 그러한 이제 자산이 될 거라고 이제 이해가 되는데요. 그러면 이제 세 분이 보시기에 어떤 조건이 갖춰져야 이 데이터가 정말 우리에게 유용한 자산이 될 수 있는지, 경쟁력을 가질 수 있는 자산이 될 수 있는지 말씀해 주시기 바라고요. 두 번째는 한국은 그러한 그 조건에 얼마나 가까이 와 있다고 보시는지 평가해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 그럼 먼저 첸 교수님께 부탁드리겠습니다.
Okay, great. This is a quick correction. Manufacturing data, there are some machine-generated data, but there are also a lot of human-generated data. Like I use shipbuilding as an example, because shipbuilding, most of the time, you need a worker with very advanced welding technique to do that. Although we can use welding robot, but they can still do simple works. But very advanced welding work, they need skilled workers, and because that work alone, then not just you need to see the same track, but you may need to also hear that. So these are the tacit knowledge that the workers have, right? They need to go through trainings. So how do you collect those data? It's very important. And then once you collect it, this is more domain specific and also company-wise, because every company compete against each other with their techniques, right? So these are the skill set, and skill set data will incorporate in that. So therefore, if you say you collect a lot of data and then you want to cross industry to use I believe there must be a governing organization to look into that, or association to look at that. What are the fundamental knowledge they want to share? And there are also situations that some people still want to keep as a trade secret. So therefore, I foresee that this kind of a data is still, you need systematic collect that. But in the end, how am I going to keep that? I think on the government policy side, they need to decide how are they going to handle with the data from the private company or public company, because private and public, they do have different kind of policies looking at how to usages and using public funding, private funding, and so forth.
모한 교수님 감사합니다.
So, just you rightly pointed, just having enormous amount of data is not going to be a winning case. I foresee that the three important factors will transform how this data is utilized. The first one, the most important, is people. So how people are harnessed, and that can come in two forms. First is training the human capital to be AI ready. Currently, I see with South Korea is very prominent in the use of AI software tools, but now is training towards physical AI. But training is just one part when it comes to people. Acceptance can be very different because people may have an innate bias against or pro towards physical AI. So the training has to equip people with right skill set, but also acceptance with these new AI physical tools. The second, beyond people, is the process. Again, with data now, vast majority of the data are not really very useful, even though we have huge knowledge base from industrial automation and manufacturing bases. So how can we put in place processes that can result in very meaningful collection of data? So process become critical in the data collection. And again, how can we transform current manufacturing processes, the workflow, to be AI integrated? AI orchestration is going to be a big thing. I also see in the theme of this conference, ecosystem being a word that is used in many, many places and forums. Ecosystem is going to be critical. So how can we have AI orchestrated ecosystem in the manufacturing processes? It becomes critical. So the people, the process, and the third vital part is policy. So policy, I see, would transcend into two thrusts. One, as an enabler. So how can policy enable use of AI? And tangential to that is the regulations. So with policy, it has to, one end, accelerate adoption of AI, but another end, put guardrails so that there is no impact when it comes to job transformation, losing of jobs, as well as restructuring of jobs, and also safety security aspects when it comes to rollout of AI. So I see that there are three important thrusts: the people, the process, and the policy. That would decide how much and the economy can be competitive and leverage on the success of AI.
Thank you. 고맙습니다.
네. 한국 기업의 제조 데이터는 분명 잠재적으로 굉장히 강력한 자산입니다. 한국은 UN 산업개발기구 유니도라고 하죠. 유니도에서 발표하는 공식 데이터에 의하면 제조 경쟁력 지수가 한 3, 4위권을 지속적으로 유지하고 있습니다. 뿐만 아니라 로텍부터 하이텍까지 골고루 산업 구조 안에서 이제 활동하고 있고 생산된 제조물의 40%는 이제 수출하고 있는 수출 지향형 제조 국가입니다. 이런 구조 속에서 매일 축적되는 현장 데이터와 암묵지는 피지컬 AI 시대의 분명한 이제 자산이 될 텐데 방금 우리 모한 교수님께서도 말씀 주셨듯이 중요한 것은 데이터가 많으냐가 아니라 쓸모 있는 데이터가 많으냐, 쓸모 있는 형태로 존재하느냐가 중요합니다. 한국의 제조업은 사실 이제 선도 기업들은 굉장히 높은 수준의 생산성과 자율 제조 수준을 갖추고 있는 것으로 평가됩니다. 반면에 중소 중견기업으로 내려가면 실제로는 데이터를 쌓아가고 있지 않거나 아날로그 데이터 형태로 남아 있거나 혹은 서로 다른 형식으로 분절되어서 저장하는 이런 현실에 지금 멈춰 있다고 평가되는데요. 그래서 이제 데이터가 진짜 자산이 되기 위해서는 세 가지 조건이 필요하다라고 봅니다. 첫째로는 표준화된 형태로 데이터를 구조화하는 것. 구조화한다는 것 자체가 맥락을 만들어낸다는 것이고, 이 컨텍스트가 있어야 이제 AI로 활용할 수가 있는 거죠. 두 번째로는 공장과 공장 간의 공급망 사이에 데이터를 연결할 수 있는 산업 인터넷 인프라가 충분히 보편적으로 보급되어야 합니다. 이를 통해서 공장 안에서의 엔터프라이즈 내에서의 최적화뿐만 아니라 국가 전체로의 산업 지능 전체를 올릴 수 있는 인프라로 발전하게 되는 거죠. 세 번째로는 이를 AI와 결합해서 의사결정과 공정 최적화에 활용할 수 있는 플랫폼 역량입니다. 현재는 한국은 단일 솔루션들은 경쟁력이 있는 것으로 평가되고 있습니다만은 국가 전체로 아우르는 플랫폼 역량은 조금 부족한 것으로 평가가 되고 있어서 한국은 우리 그 좌장께서 말씀해 주셨던 어떤 수준으로 말씀 주시면은 한 절반 정도에 와 있다, 이렇게 이제 평가를 하고 있습니다. 쉽게 말해서 한국의 공장 안에서는 좋은 데이터가 쌓이는 공장도 있지만 그렇지 않은 공장들도 많이 있어서 공장 안의 기계들은 이미 노래를 하고 있지만 실제로는 그 소리를 표준화된 방식으로 녹음하고 연결해서 활용하는 시스템은 아직 좀 부족하다. 그렇지만 다른 어느 국가보다도 잠재력은 높다. 이렇게 말씀드리고 싶습니다.
네, 세 분 말씀 감사합니다. 이제 말씀을 두 번째 질문에 대한 말씀을 들어보니까요. 데이터가 이제 자산이 되기 위해서는 잘 모으고 잘 연결시키고 또 사람도 중요하고 절차도 중요하고 그다음에 정책도 중요하고 표준화, 연결, 결합 뭐 이런 것들 말씀해 주셨는데 그 키워드를 묶어보니까 제가 생각하기에는 환경 혹은 생태계 이렇게로 기결이 되는 것 같습니다. 그러니까 새로운 구조적인 환경, 생태계를 만들어야 될 것 같은데요. 근데 사실 이런 생태계를 만든다는 것, 그리고 그 생태계를 실제로 작동시킨다는 것이 상당한 챌린지이죠. 어려움이라고 생각이 듭니다. 그래서 이번에는 이 문제를 한번 다뤄보고 싶은데요. 특히 우리 싱가포르에서 오신 두 분 전문가들께서는 창업까지도 하신 경험이 있으시니까 이 문제를 어떻게 풀으셨는지 좀 해안을 듣고 싶습니다. 그러니까 피지컬 AI와 로봇 분야에서 어쨌든 대기업, 뭐 스타트업, 정부, 사실은 사람까지도 우리 뭐 근로 현장에 그 제조 현장에 있는 사람뿐만 아니라 모든 국민까지도 함께 이제 움직여야 하는 생태계가 필요하다라고 이제 이해가 되는데요. 그런데 싱가포르나 이제 대한민국 같은 우리나라 같은 경우에는 모두가 이제 내수가 크지 않은 작은 나라라는 이제 공통점이 있습니다. 이제 싱가포르 같은 경우에는 국가 로봇 프로그램이라던가 아니면 대학과 이제 스타트업의 스핀오프 같은 경험이 이제 많이 축적되어 있는 것으로 제가 알고 있는데요. 그러니까 이것이 어떻게 보면 생태계를 만들어가는 아주 중요한 스태핑 스톤이라고 이해가 되는데 이 과정에서, 그러니까 실제로 이게 작동되는 과정에서 가장 큰 장애물이 무엇이 있으셨는지, 그리고 그 교훈들이, 경험과 교훈이 우리나라에 이제 어떻게 이제 적용될 수 있는지 말씀을 해주시면 좋겠는데, 이번에는 먼저 모한 교수님 말씀해 주시고, 그 다음에 우리 첸 교수님 말씀해 주시고, 그다음 이제 조 센터장님께 부탁드리겠습니다.
So, like you rightly pointed, South Korea and Singapore has many challenges and opportunities, much alike. When it comes to being an export-oriented nations that faces challenges with labor shortage, aging population. So adoption of technology presents huge opportunity. So ecosystem building is going to be vital as it brings various interested entities together, from government, it can be large MNCs to startups. Challenges alike, the key challenges are that this technology no more could be done like 5 or 10 year cycle. The technology evolution cycles have shortened, and therefore now the process and policies has to also expedite and catch up with such trend, because the technological cycles are much faster, and if policy stays longer, it's not going to be an enabler but a challenge or constraint to both MNCs and companies. Again, infrastructure enablement is very important. Right, our speaker rightly pointed, the data need to be right, and therefore the infrastructure has to enable the right data. So like the setting up of the National Robotics Program in Singapore acts as a control tower that can enable these quick changes when it comes to policies, both that regulates and that enable processes of how government institutions, the startups, MNCs, the universities that are producer of the talent that can work together. I'm very, very heartened to, while I talk to my colleagues, collaborators in South Korea, to hear very similar initiatives happening here. I recently heard about the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energies Max Alliance initiative, investing largely in empowering more than 500 companies with AI-enabled work processes. And more recently, I heard about the MOLIT, Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport in Korea, investing in robot-friendly buildings. And these are very, very important in a way that the infrastructure has to be readied so that it provides very useful, meaningful data that thereupon new agents can be built and new devices and edge intelligence can be built from this relevant data. So I see bright prospects both for South Korea and Singapore in this context.
Okay, thank you. Professor Chen?
Yeah. Yes, I think Mohan has already explained quite a few things. Government support is important. Like National Robotic Program in Singapore, the way they work on the project is that they collect those needed, especially the public sector demands, right? And then ask the technology performers, universities, as well as the companies to work together toward that goals. Yeah. So, so our challenge is that they give us this kind of statements, but we may not be able to reach that in one go. Yeah. But still need to a few more iteration and so forth. It's good that we know we're working on the target, but the companies may need to involve to move it further. Yeah. So this is one of the challenges that I think we're facing. But of course, the government also noticed that they're trying to improve that. Whereas we think in South Korea, I've spoken to also a number of my colleagues here in SNU and KAIST. Yes, so that you have also big companies be able to join in this effort. And then you have not only the export market, but you also have a domestic market. Singapore is essentially there's no domestic market. It's very, very small still compared to South Korea. So therefore, this is one thing that I think is quite useful in this case.
감사합니다. 사실 두 번째 질문이 싱가포르 경험을 여쭤본 거긴 하지만 그래도 우리 조성호 센터장님은 예를 들면 우리나라 현실에 비추어서 특히 뭐 이제 생태계를 조성하는 데 있어서 두 분 모두 국가의 지원이나 이니셔티브가 중요하다는 점을 지적해 주시긴 했는데요. 그거보다도 사실 뭐 대기업, 중소기업 이런 정부의 구조 간에서 우리는 사실 병목이 확실히 있는 것으로 인지가 되는데 그 부분에 대해서 조금 더 말씀을 해주시면 좋겠습니다.
지금 이제 피지컬 AI가 이제 사실 지금도 이제 태동 단계이기 때문에 이제 앞으로는 얼마나 더 발전할지 이제 모르겠지만 궁극적으로는 우리가 원하는 만큼 이제 발전하게 될 것입니다. 그래서 저는 기술보다도 먼저 일하는 방식하고 가치가 흐르는 어떤 트렌드가 달라진다 이렇게 생각하고 그 부분을 이제 쉐어하고 싶은데요. 지금까지 기업들은 생산성 혁신을 위해서 기존에는 이제 컨설팅 기업들, 도메인 전문가 컨설팅 기업들과 많은 협업을 했습니다. 그렇지만 이제 앞으로는 피지컬 AI 시대가 되면 그러한 프로젝트를 의뢰하는 클라이언트 기업과 도메인 전문가, 그러니까 이제 컨설팅 기업이죠. 이 기업과 그다음에 이제 이 AI 솔루션을 가지고 있는 클라우드 기업 이 3축이 같이 협업하는 구조로 이 발전하게 될 텐데 여기서 문제점은 이 도메인 전문가와 클라우드 기업이 이 클라이언트 기업으로부터 과금형 체계로 부가가치를 넘겨받는다는 구조로 변화하는 데 있다고 생각을 합니다. 이 부분을 강조하고 싶은데요. 그래서 이 생태계는 존재하는 그 자체 구성은 비슷합니다. 그렇지만 작동하는 방식이 기존과 다르기 때문에 인센티브와 가치 배분의 구조가 달라지는 이 맥락을 잘 이해하고 한국도 대응하지 않으면은 안 된다, 이 말씀을 드리고 싶습니다. 결국은 우리는 열심히 일하고 나서 많은 부가가치의 일부를 해외 기업에 고스란히 넘겨주게 되는 이 락인 효과에 완전 묶여버릴 수가 있는 거거든요. 그 부분을 굉장히 조심해야 되는 것입니다. 제가 앞서도 말씀드렸듯이 우리나라 선두권에 있는 주력 산업들은 제조 생산성이 굉장히 높은 걸로 알려져 있는데, 그러한 제조 생산성을 높게 유지하는 일면에는 이런 해외 클라우드 기업과 이 도메인 전문가의 지금 현재 약간의 락인이 돼 있는 형태거든요. 이런 부분들이 중소 중견기업에도 고스란히 이전된다라면은 국가 전체의 제조 부가가치가 넘어가는 이런 형태가 되는 것이죠. 그래서 이제 데이터가 우리나라가 가진 현실적인 장애물은 사실 이제 현장 데이터는 많다고 알려져 있지만은 그것을 어떻게 활용하고 맥락화하느냐, 이건 이제 실증의 문제인데, 우리 싱가포르에서도 이제 열심히 잘하고 있다고 알려져 있지만 피지컬 AI는 실제로 공장에서 검증되어야 하지만 기업 입장에서는 검증된 기술을 쉽게 받아들이기는 힘들겠죠. 그렇지만 이제 해외에서 검증된 기술은 국내 기업이 빨리빨리 받아들이다 보니까 더 락인 현상이 더 강화되는 이런 지금 현 시점에 있는 거거든요. 이런 부분들을 타개하기 위해서는 국내 클라우드 기업과 도메인 전문가가 생태계에서 같이 활동하면서 공진화할 수 있도록 이렇게 이제 정부가 도와주고 민간도 같이 협력하는 이러한 노력들이 지속적으로 필요하다고 생각하고 있습니다.
네, 감사합니다. 사실 제가 피지컬 AI를 이제 접하고 이제 공부하기 시작하면서 가장 먼저 의문이 크게 하나는 데이터에 대한 문제고, 다른 하나는 기술 종속성에 대한, 아까 락인 효과라고 표현을 하셨는데 기술 종속성에 대한 문제의식이었습니다. 그래서 사실 그와 관련돼서 두 개의 질문을 준비했는데요. 첫 번째 질문은 사실은 어떻게 가장 기저에 있는 예컨대 파운데이션 모델 같은 것들을 독자적으로 개발할 필요성이 있는지, 한국은 사실 지금 추진을 하고 있는 상황인데요. 근데 제가 보기엔 기술 격차가 미국이나 중국이나에 비해서 굉장히 크기 때문에 그러한 기회 비용을 우리가 어떤 형태로 수용을 해야 되는 건지, 그런 리스크를 테이킹해야 되는 건지, 이런 이제 문제의식이 좀 있습니다. 아마 그 부분에 대해서는 생각들이 좀 다 다르시겠지만 피지컬 AI라는 관점에서 과연 이제 국가가 파운데이션 모델을 독자적으로, 그러니까 싱가포르든 우리나라든 이제 계속 추진하는 것이 좋은 전략인지에 대해서 한번 짚어봐 주셨으면 좋겠고요. 두 번째는 기술 종속성의 문제인데요. 저는 피지컬 AI가 아주 유용할 것 같지만 오히려 이제 기술 종속을 심화시키게 하지 않을까라는 우려나 불안감이 있습니다. 왜냐하면 이제 하드웨어는 지금 중국의 경쟁력이 너무 높고요. 제가 이해하는 바로는 근데 소프트웨어 플랫폼이나 클라우드 인프라는 미국의 이제 빅테크에 의존하는 이제 구조가 지금 어떻게 보면은 깊어지고 있는 것 같습니다. 다시 이제 말씀을 드리면 한국이 피지컬 AI를 적극적으로 도입하면 할수록 이 두 강대국에 대한 기술이나 산업 종속이 심화되는 역설적인 상황이 이제 펼쳐질 수 있다는 이제 우려가 있는데요. 여기 계신 전문가들께서는 이 우려는 또 어떻게 보고 계시는지, 이런 종속이 없는 피지컬 AI 도입이 현실적으로 가능하다고 생각하시는지 이 부분을 좀 짚어봐 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 최현 교수님 먼저 부탁드리겠습니다.
Okay. Firstly, I think the large model competition has already been very fierce in between China and US. I think they are really leading in the first tier. So other countries moving into that will be very difficult. However, I would see that if you look at physical AI, they're still embedded into every industry, right? So no matter the traditional or new advanced manufacturing or EVs, drones, or even hospital service industry. So these require domain data. And most important thing is people always forget about one thing. When we do robotics, integration is very critical. So integration meaning you integrate your software and the hardware, right? So physical AI, so as to say, is still software, right? Hardware need to bring together. How do you tune that? We've been doing robotics for 30 years, so we know that integration effort is still a lot. Now, will the physical AI improve or shortening that process? Could be, but I think this is way to go. But then, now this integrator is very, very critical. So integrator need to possess the AI capability and shortening this. This is what I call it as a super AI. Super SI. Yeah. Because in the past, integrator, they are all just mechanical engineering or electrical hardware, right? But now with the computer vision or the learning in there, so their capability advance more. So with physical AI, they can even advance more because in the end, customer, no matter how, they want to see a full solution. It's a software plus hardware. You give them a physical AI, they don't know how to do. You give them a robot, they don't know how to do. So therefore, they have to, the integrator is really the gateway from the physical AI company, hardware company, to the end user. So how do you grow this integrator? I believe in South Korea, you have very strong integrators. So these parts need to be strengthened. I think government need to really look into that, and the company still also need to take care of them. And no matter when you do solutioning output for the different country, this will go along with you. So it's not just manufacturing, hospital systems or whatever system, even clean industry, they have a whole solution. So these the integrator is to play a key role. So this going back to the last part is that because China put in a lot of hardware, right? But honestly speaking, in Korea, you also have very good hardware company, right? So how do you integrate your physical AI with hardware is still a advantage, a niche for the integrator. So I don't foresee that this issue. Because in the end, your hardware, you can source globally. So there's no issue of whether you're using the US one, Japan one, Korea one, or German one. So that's, you need to choose the best.
감사합니다. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll take your question in two stages. The first stage is about dependency and independence. Just looking back and looking forward, I see there's no way that any country can be fully independent. It would change from one form to another, just like maybe friendshoring, as the previous panel was talking. So the dependency shifts from one group of countries to another group of countries time to time. But it's going to be impossible for one country to stay independent. We are still in like a kind of global village, but more a community-based global village with common interests and philosophies. So moving forward, it will still be a dependent economy, but with a group of countries coming together, synergizing their strengths. So to that end, I see both South Korea and Singapore has very strong domain expertise in certain countries, like South Korea, the case of semiconductor, shipbuilding, manufacturing, and beyond. So with that, moving to the second part, with any technology or any or technological era, there has always been a general purpose versus application specific or domain specific. So countries like South Korea and Singapore are well positioned to take on leadership in niche domain specific areas. That need not be a new one, it can be a new one. It can be something that we already hold leadership position that we can build upon because the data availability is there, trained people already there, policies favor this industry. There has always been an edge in export of solution from this domain. And only thing we need to do is move from a traditional approach that was less intelligent to now with physical AI that's more intelligent, data is much more structured, and people have been evolved and human capital developed to tackle this. So the dependence will continue. It's just the whole industry can continue on the same niche, evolving physical systems to now physical AI systems. Thank you.
Thank you.
네, 저는 이 문제를 기초냐 응용이냐 이렇게 양자 선택의 문제는 아니라고 보고요. 뭐 물론 여기 청자들께서도 이제 다 뭐 그런 마음에 동의한다고 저는 생각합니다. 결국 이것은 이제 기초나 응용이냐 이렇게 이제 선택하기보다는 어디에 주도권을 줄 것인가라는 관점에서 좀 생각해 보자고 말씀드리고 싶어요. 아래층이 없는 위층이 없듯이 기초가 없는 응용은 없고 쓰임이 없는 기초도 그 효용을 이야기하기 좀 어렵겠죠. 한국은 아까 우리 좌장께서도 말씀 주셨듯이 월드 베스트 LLM 모델 프로젝트를 지금 진행하고 있습니다. 국내 유수의 AI 기업들이 컨소시엄을 이루고 서로 경쟁을 해서 엄격한 평가를 거친 후에 6개월에 한 팀씩 탈락해서 내년 초에는, 늦어도 내년 초에는 한국형, 세계 최고 수준의 한국형 독자 AI 파운데이션 모델을 갖는 걸 목표로 하고 있습니다. 이게 의미하는 이유는 그 시점이 되면 우리나라의 세계 수준의 독자 파운데이션 모델을 활용해서 공공에서든 산업에서든 개인이든 그 모델을 이용해서 전체의 국가 경쟁력을 끌어올리는 전략을 추진하고 있는 것이죠. 그래서 이제 우리가 이제 지향하는 것은 이 기초 모델이 어디에 쓰이냐입니다. 여러 매체에서 일관되게 이제 강조하고 있듯이 피지컬 AI의 경쟁력은 범용 모델 자체보다는 제조 현장의 데이터, 그다음 도메인 지식, 그다음에 하드웨어와 소프트웨어 간의 통합 역량에서 결정되기 때문에 차근차근 한국은 준비해 가고 있다 이렇게 말씀드릴 수 있을 것 같고요. 그리고 이제 추가적으로 말씀드리고 싶은 것은 기초는 전략적으로 확보해야 한다고 생각합니다. 우리나라가 미국이나 중국만큼 인프라 투자의 규모에 있어서는 그렇게 갈 수가 없기 때문에 전략적으로 기초 역량은 확보하고 실제 승부는 응용 영역에서 산업 피지컬 AI 영역에서 승부를 보아야 한다 이렇게 말씀드리고 싶습니다. 두 번째로는 이렇게 이제 피지컬 AI 시대로 넘어가면 넘어갈수록 종속이 심화되지 않느냐라고 이제 질문을 주셨는데 일견 동의하는 부분은 있습니다. 왜냐하면 중국은 하드웨어 부문과 현장 적용 부문에서 굉장히 영향력을 확대해 가고 있고 미국과 유럽은 뭐 소프트웨어라든지 클라우드 기반의 솔루션에서 굉장히 영향력이 큰 것은 사실입니다. 그렇지만 이제 우리나라도 구성적인 면에서 봤을 때는 중국과 미국, 유럽이 가지고 있는 이러한 역량들을 내재화하고 있기 때문에 이것들을 통합하고 최적화하는 데 승부를 거는 이러한 국가 전략이 필요하다라고 생각을 합니다.
네, 감사합니다. 사실 저는 종속의 위험을 짚어주십사 말씀드렸는데 그 극복할 수 있는 방안을 말씀을 해주셔서 정말 전문가들의 해안이 놀랍다 이렇게 제가 좀 감동을 받았고요. 근데 이제 제가 또 피지컬 AI 관련해서 아주 나이브한 또 질문이 하나 더 있는데 만약 그러니까 한국이 이 피지컬 AI에 투자를 하는 그러니까 경쟁력이 있다 이렇게 짚어주시긴 했는데 정말 이렇게 여기에 이렇게 투자를 하는 것이 이렇게 경제적으로 우리에게 이득일까? 이 문제를 좀 근본적인 질문 여쭤보고 싶은데요. 그러니까 무슨 말씀이냐면 피지컬 AI를 우리가 성장 동력으로 찾고 이 산업을 키운다고 했을 때 과연 한국이 부강해질 수 있을까? 이건 싱가포르도 마찬가지일 것 같은데 제가 아주 나이브한 질문을 드리는 걸 양해해 주시고요. 여쭤보면 피지컬 AI의 핵심은 제가 봤을 때는 생산성을 높이고 효율성을 강화하는 데 있다고 보여집니다. 그런데 이제 이걸 이제 시장의 관점에서 제가 보자고 말씀드린 이유는 뭐냐면 로봇을 한번 도입하면 수년간 운영이 될 것 같아요. 그리고 로봇은 사실 24/7 일하잖아요. 그쵸? 그래서 쉬지 않고 일을 하기 때문에 필요한 수량이 그렇게 많지도 않을 것 같아요. 제가 생각하기에는. 그리고 반도체나 자동차 같은 소모품처럼 이렇게 매년 꾸준히 이렇게 팔리는 제품 구조하고도 좀 다르지 않을까 이런 생각이 드는데요. 그러면 과연 이 피지컬 AI라는 시장이 한국 기업이 이제 뛰어들었을 때 지속적으로 이윤을 낼 수 있는 그런 이제 규모로 성장할 수 있을까? 이게 이제 제가 가지고 있는 고민입니다. 그리고 시장 자체는 크게 성장할 수 있겠죠. 그렇게 전망을 하고 계시고요. 근데 그 수익이 한국으로 혹은 싱가포르로 들어오려면 그 가치사슬 안에서 어느 위치를 점해야 되는지 이게 정말 크리티컬할 것 같은데 어느 위치를 점해야 되는지, 아까 인테그레이션 이런 표현도 하시긴 하셨는데 그 지점인 것인지 아니면 더 플러스 알파가 있는 것인지, 그리고 한국이 그러한 위치를 점할 수 있는 현실적인 조건을 갖추고 있다고 보시는 건지 좀 자유롭게 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 우리 먼저 그러면 우리 조성호 센터장님께 여쭤보고 순서대로 이렇게 오겠습니다.
네, 저는 두 가지 관점에서 정리해서 말씀을 드리고 싶어요. 일단은 부강하게 할 수 있냐라는 답변에 대해서는 그렇다라고 답변을 드리고 싶고, 이걸 그러면은 안 하면은 부강해지지 않느냐, 유지도 못하느냐라는 측면에서는 하지 않으면은 굉장히 쇠락해질 거다. 이렇게 이제 답변을 드리고 싶어요. 첫 번째 답변에 대한 부연을 조금 설명을 드리면은 피지컬 AI가 한국 경제를 부강하게 할 수 있다고는 보지만은 그 핵심은 로봇을 몇 대 더 파느냐에 있는 게 아니라 그 전체의 산업 지능을 올리고 있느냐로 이제 귀결된다고 봅니다. 말씀처럼 하드웨어는 일회성 판매에 그칠 수가 있어요. 그렇지만 이제 반도체처럼 물량이 계속 폭증하는 그런 시장은 아닐 수도 있습니다. 물론 커스터마이징 한다면은 여러 가지 이제 수요들은 찾을 수가 있을 텐데, 그렇지만 피지컬 AI의 본질은 로봇 본체보다도 맥락 있는 데이터의 축적, 그 다음에 그를 통한 공정 최적화, 디지털 트윈, 예지 보전, 에이전틱 AI, 클라우드 엣지 운영, 유지 보수, 성능 개선이 결합된 지속형 수익 모델이 있습니다. 여기가 이제 중요한 포인트인데, 제가 강조하고 싶은 것은 전통적 SI 기업들이 제조 혁신에 있어서 한 번의 거래로 끝나는 이런 비즈니스를 했다면은 피지컬 AI 시대로 넘어오면은 지속형 과금 체제로 넘어가고 있기 때문에 우리나라가 적극적으로 우리 제조 중심의 산업 구조를 가지고 있는 우리나라 입장, 한국 입장에서는 이걸 준비하지 않을 수 없다. 이걸 이제 강조를 하고 싶고요. 그래서 이제 우리나라는 하드웨어를 파는 현재의 산업 구조에서 지능형 시스템을 수출하는 수출국으로 변모하는 과정, 이 과정에서 우리의 기회도 있고 이 보다 좋은 미래도 있다, 이렇게 이제 생각을 합니다. 이 정도로 말씀을 드리겠습니다.
네, 감사합니다. 그러면 모한 교수님.
Yes. So my view about physical AI is this: physical AI is not going to be a standalone industry by itself. It's actually going to be a layer that is stacked on existing industries. It can be manufacturing, automobile, shipbuilding, semicon, but physical AI will become the new enabler, the force multiplier for these companies. In a way, I see the view is that if we take each one of the sector to be equivalent of moving to one place to another, in the past, people used chariots and horse-driven vehicles, moving from one city to another. But now physical AI is going to be like the cars and the trucks. So moving from one place to another remain the same, meaning shipbuilding industry is shipbuilding industry, semicon is semicon, healthcare is healthcare. But the way this industry move is going to transform from horse-driven or bull cart-driven vehicles to now cars and trucks. And how is it going to have an impact on the larger economy? Imagine the case of bull carts and chariots. The whole ecosystem that fabricated these chariots were very different type of factories to that of cars and trucks. So the whole ecosystem will have an implication because the way processes are handled and people are trained, policies are managed will change from traditional manufacturing, irrespective of the domain, to one that is powered by physical AI. So it's going to have a huge implication end-to-end. So physical AI may not be treated as a separate industry tagged to a quadruped or humanoid robot, but more like a force multiplier for individual sector. Why is this critical? For economies like South Korea and Singapore, we are an export-driven economy and we need to respond fast. And therefore, it's highly critical for us to embrace this change because it will have a huge implication on the entire ecosystem. And just like how we shifted from searching in Google to using ChatGPT or Gemini, the change will happen really fast. And therefore, it's critical that the end-to-end ecosystem is ready for such a change. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm still going back to my word on the integration. But this integration is much broader. And then firstly, physical AI is one part of this whole chain, right? But on the higher level, you look at the data. How do you need to have the senior workers and collect their tested data, keep their data, and feeding this data into the physical AI, and then you do the integration with the machine, fine-tuning and making this as an output for the goods. So with the physical AI, and then also the coming, in fact, is happening, those AI agents. And also need to bear in mind, when we do the R&D, we also have to design. Design AI agent can be part of it, so that you can greatly shorten your whole product development cycle or even manufacturing cycle, so that you can make your whole industry to be more competitive and agile. Because I believe this is still the main thing. People looking at manufacturing, no matter domestic or for export oriented, you need the time, agility, changing things, right? So people adopt robot, maybe they only use for 3 months. The rest of the time, now they say, I just use human because my order is so quick. I don't have the time to collect all this. So therefore, how do you bring all this together, integration? And this integrator, I mean, is not just traditional integrator, super integrator, be able to do this and make things agile happening.
Okay.
This is what I say is, if you look at the whole chain, right? I believe you have most of that. It's just that on the high end side, how do you collect the data? That's also very, very critical.
세 분의 말씀을 들어보니까 저거 피지컬 AI에 조금 더 긍정적인 생각을 가져야겠다 이렇게 그런 이제 마음을 고쳐먹게 됐는데요. 저희가 이제 뭐 전략이나 시장에 대한 이야기, 또 경쟁력에 대한 이야기를 충분히 나눴으니까 이제는 좀 이제 실제 현장에 대한 이야기를 좀 해보고 싶은데요. 제가 생각하기에는 이제 피지컬 AI에 관련된 문제는 뭐 기술의 그 도입하는 과정에서 기술이 장벽이 된다기보다는 오히려 이제 사람과 조직이 훨씬 더 큰 문제나 장벽이 되지 않을까 이런 생각이 좀 드는데요. 뭐 한국에서도 좀 그런 연초에 그런 이제 노동 현장에 계신 분들이 거부감을 나타내는 이런 그 이벤트도 좀 있었고요. 그래서 이 부분에 대해서 특히 우리 이제 실제 창업을 하셨고 많은 경험이 있으신 두 분 교수님이 중심 뭐 더 좋은 말씀해 주실 수 있을 것 같은데 그 사람과 조직, 기존의 조직이 만드는 어떤 장벽들 이것들을 이제 어떻게 극복해야 되는지, 예를 들면 노동자들의 거부감이라던가 현장 암묵지를 데이터로 만드는 어려움이라던가 조직 내 저항이 이제 있을 수도 있을 것 같은데 이런 것들을 실제 경험하신 적이 있으신지 아니면 그때 어떠한 일이 벌어졌는지 그리고 이런 것들을 어떻게 풀어내셨는지 이런 경험들을 좀 나눠주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Okay, so I think this is very typical when we do this project. If you looking at the company senior manager, when they can try to start a productivity project, they always want to go, right? But only at the middle or at the really the ground level workers know what are they facing. So the way we did was to really need to spend time to communicate with the workers to understand what is their really critical roles so that we change some of the scopes. Like some of our national project on the surgical instruments, cleaning, inspections, all this, right? The hospital management say, hey, this is what we want to go, but they don't know exactly what to go. So we talk to the nurses, understands to their really actual needs and their concerns, so we modify that. So we need to spend a lot of time on exploring, communicating with the ground level workers, and then of course with this we can feed back to the senior management, because in the end senior management, their goal is try to improve productivity, but we should not having reduce the friction among the working level. So this is what we did most of the time.
Okay, thank you.
So I see when it comes to people, they are very critical. Like you rightly mentioned, there can be technology, but if it's not used or not used properly, you would not achieve the same level of productivity that is expected. So with my engagement with companies and also with my startup, I see there are two critical areas. One is developing the human capital with the right skill set to use the right tools, because the tools are also changing very fast. So the company has to keep up pace with introducing the personnel within the company with right skills and tools, and that has to accelerate faster. If the training plans are biannual or yearly, now it has to shrunk to review quarterly and maybe half-yearly. And the second thing is about acceptance, because there can always be a bias against the robots or artificial intelligence, and this has to be tackled in a very, very careful way. And this can be done maybe with some successful case studies with the companies that I'm advising, or with my startup, is running pilots, is to demonstrate clearly for individuals in various departments through quick and targeted pilots that can capture the real value of productivity and also how it impacts the individual. Because competition is global, and therefore adopting these tools and techniques is going to benefit the company and its global competitive index. And if the employees get to understand this clearly, how use of these AI tools directly position the competitive index of the company, it really, really helps. And I have seen it personally in many multiple companies and cases. But it has to be done with quick and targeted pilots with well-defined KPIs. So it becomes critical. So in addition to that is also policies that come into play, both within organization, national level policies. In Singapore recently, our Prime Minister announced a multi-ministerial task force and a nationwide campaign, even providing access to AI tools to the larger public. Such initiatives really help in terms of accessibility to the AI tools, and also the larger drive is not just about my company or my department driving AI, but the whole nation is embracing AI. So it really brings about a positive change in the community.
Thank you. 네,
네.
조 센터장님. 네.
실제 장벽은 기술이 아니라 사람일 수도 있는 거죠. 조직의 저항일 수도 있는 거거든요. 있는 거일 수도 있고요. 제가 앞서 말씀드렸듯이 이제 우리 산업부에서 관리하고 있는 12대 국가 주력 산업의 최상위에 있는 생산성을 보여주는 기업들은 사실 이 사람의 어떤 그 생산성만을 향상시키는 AI 도입보다는 완전한 무인 자율 공장을 만드는 쪽에서 실제 생산성의 향상이 일어나고 있거든요. 그래서 우리나라에서 피지컬 AI를 활발하게 도입하는 어떤 사례들에서는 거의 사람이 일하지 않는 공장으로 만드는 경우가 많습니다. 이게 이제 반대로 얘기하면은 기존의 공정에 참여하는 사람들을 도와주는 형태, 혹은 돕는다기보다는 그분들이 받아들일 때는 대체될 수 있다라는 걱정, 이런 부분들이 실제 이제 현장에서는 좀 저항으로 이렇게 이제 비춰질 수가 있는 거죠. 그래서 이제 그럼에도 불구하고 이 길은 가지 않을 수 없는 길입니다. 왜냐하면은 생산성이 결국 높아지면은 공급망과 공급망을 구성하는 엔터프라이즈들이 훨씬 더 단순화될 것입니다. 왜냐하면 무인으로 운영되기 때문이죠. 그래서 이것들을 대응하지 않으면 안 되는데, 이런 문제를 풀기 위해서는 기술 자체를 대체 수단으로 여기게끔 하지 말고 초반에는 보조 수단으로 여기게끔 이렇게 인식시켜서 이러한 암묵지나 데이터들이 디지털 자산화되게끔 하는 중간 다리를 건너야 된다라고 생각을 하고요. 우리나라도 이런 부분에 대해서는 굉장히 신경을 많이 써서 아까 우리 교수님께서도 말씀하셨듯이 산업통상부에서도 이런 부분을 신경 쓰고 있지만 중소벤처기업부에서도 이런 중소기업에서의 어떤 그 암묵지 같은 내용들을 디지털 자산화하는 이런 쪽으로 정책을 많이 추진을 하고 있습니다.
네. 감사합니다. 저희 이제 시간이 너무 빨리 지나서 1분 정도밖에 안 남았는데요. 그래서 마지막으로 세 분께 오늘 이 자리에는 사실은 여러 그 이해관계자들이 계십니다. 기업을 경영하시는 분도 계시고, 정책을 만드시는 분도 계시고, 연구나 개발을 하고 계신 분도 계시고, 또 피지컬 AI 도입을 고민하고 계신 분도 계실 거라고 생각을 하는데요. 그냥 키워드 하나로 혹은 두 개로 지금 당장 달라져야 할 것, 아니면 지금 당장 시작해야 할 것, 이거 무엇인지 이렇게 핵심 키워드로 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 우리 최 교수님 먼저.
My keywords is to try to capture your tacit knowledge with senior workers, appreciate their effort, and secondly, act agilely with all these AI and think as a whole system for integration as well.
키워드였지만 키 센텐스도 좋습니다. 감사합니다.
Correct.
오한 교수님 부탁드리겠습니다.
I see physical AI is already here. Both South Korea and Singapore has huge opportunities. Let's collaborate and share on best practices and outcomes that we see.
감사합니다.
네, 피지컬 AI는 결국은 생산성을 위해서 최적화한다는 문제로 이제 귀결한다면은 최적화라는 것은 결국 어떤 맥락에서 최적화할 것인가 이게 이제 중요하다라고 봅니다. 그래서 이제 데이터라고 하는 것은 이게 인포메이션으로 바뀌려면 맥락이 있어야 되는 거죠. 그러니까 컨텍스티드 데이터가 굉장히 중요하고 그러한 부분 맥락을 가진 데이터를 통해서 최적화한다. 최적화는 결국은 오케스트레이션입니다. 그래서 이제 협연을 잘 할 수 있는 이런 산업진흥을 올릴 수 있는 정책을 우리나라도 계속 추진해 나가야 된다고 생각을 합니다.
네. 자, 우리 첸 교수님, 오한 교수님, 우리 조성우 센터장님 오늘 정말 그 해안과 통찰의 깊은 말씀을 나눠주셔서 깊이 감사드립니다. 저는 오늘 이 자리에 오기 전에는 피지컬 AI가 우리나라의 기회가 될지 도전이 될지 아니면 또 다른 종속, 기술 종속의 시작이 될지 그런 이제 우려감을 갖고 왔는데요. 오늘 이렇게 토론을 들으면서 우리나라에 정말 기회가 될 수 있겠다. 싱가포르에도 기회가 될 수 있겠다. 이런 생각을 했습니다. 그 기회를 잘 잡기 위해서는 여기 계신 모든 분들이 인터그레이트하고 콜라보레이트하고 또 최적화하는 이런 노력이 필요한 것 같습니다. 그 시작이 이 자리가 되기를 바라고요. 함께해 주신 우리 패널 세 분의 패널 토론과 청중 분들께 깊이 감사드립니다. 이상으로 오늘 준비된 패널 토론을 마치겠습니다. 감사합니다. Thank you so much.
Well, it was a great session. Now we're going to shift our gears once again. Perhaps try to connect the first session and second session on AI all together. I really enjoyed Professor Jay Lee's very energetic, dynamic presentation. And also, before I forget, I want to mention it's always great to be with our MC of this key platform, Andrew Verbal. You've been to Korea many times by now. Always good to see you. We have a wonderful map here. We're going to make you a bit intrigued. This is really geo-economic conversation, perhaps new opportunities for Korea. But before I get into it, very quickly, I want to say one thing though. You know, we had a wonderful conversation on AI. Nowadays, when you go to meetings, conferences, AI, it's been really such a fashionable word. People talk about AI all the time. But before AI, what I call, we used to have 3 eyes. Before AI, there used to be 3 eyes in my mind. Those 3 eyes is ideas. You know, we need ideas to make something happen, especially something positive. And second eye is institutions, either company or organizations or even country. Ideas and institutions. But the third eye, perhaps most important, is individuals, all of you. So AI is actually coming from three I's: ideas and institutions and individuals. I say this because what we are going to talk about today through this special dialogue with my dear friend Afghan Nifty is something really represents and presents 3I dimension: ideas and institutions and individuals, especially in this very rapidly evolving geoeconomic landscape. So that's the kind of setting, and then we're going to dive into some more specific conversations, and we're going to explain, especially Afghan will explain why this map matters to South Korea. And this is really geoeconomic conversation you may want to pay attention to, because United States is paying attention to this. President Trump is paying attention to this. Now, I have three quick questions, Afghan, for our conversation. First of all, welcome to Korea.
Thank you.
This is your
it's good
long
to be here.
overdue trip to Korea. You've been thinking about it. So my first question to you, Afghan, for our audience, briefly, just explain your wonderful organization based in Washington, D.C., Caspian Policy Center, what that is, and then your kind of relevance to this geoeconomic landscape. That's the first question.
First of all, I want to thank MoneyToday for organizing such a great conversation, and Anthony for bringing us here together. Terrific conversation, two conversations I've listened in the morning. All the presentations was very interesting. I want to say that at the Caspian Policy Center, we do look some of these issues that has been discussed in the morning. Caspian Policy Center, based in Washington, is a think tank, basically. We are not a big think tank. We are, I would call it more boutique and focused organization. In a particular part of the world that you see on the map that was here, we're looking to the Caucasus, Central Asia, Middle Corridor, Trans-Caspian, connectivity, energy issues, trying to understand rapidly emerging and changing important space that are geostrategically located right in between the very big powerful nations, where these nations and the region is trying to diversify their relationship, but also trying to connect with the world. Connectivity is a key word for this region, and we are trying to understand what are the key dynamics are in this region, trying to explain this policy community. And my dear colleague Niall was mentioning about policy recommendations for US policy making. We are trying to produce papers, analysis focused on this region, trying to explain the US policy making, what are the stakes in this region, and how US can better connect with this region, and also how to get this region better be allies with the nations of the free world.
Well said, and you're being humble as well. The Caspian Policy Center, over the past 11, 12 years, you've been really putting together, again, three I's: quality ideas, quality institutions, quality individuals, to advance very important subjects: infrastructure development, energy security, and also connectivity. So all the discussions we are having today and going forward, energy security, AI, data center, all these things, that's all really relevant to you and what Caspian Policy Center has been doing and to our conversation. Now, I really want to set the stage right here. This is a really important geoeconomic, geopolitical conversation, because as we talked about in the first session, opening session, a lot of things are happening very rapidly. Here and overseas, and also different factors: trade, energy, technology, competition, everything. But the map Afghan will explain, this part of the world is something that really deserves elevated attention, especially from investment perspective and also Korea's engagement into the region. I'll stop there, but in terms of setting the stage, I really want to say Central Asia and Caspian region. This is basically the area, the region that connects West and East through trade, through investment, through energy cooperation, partnership. And obviously that includes AI, data center, everything. So with that, Afghan, why do we have this map this morning? Could you start talking about the relevance of this map to our conversation?
It's very important for global need for critical minerals, you mentioned about energy
I forgot
security.
the critical mineral name.
Yes. Because I was listening to the data, AI, development, technology. Critical minerals carries a special importance on that. This region is rich with the energy resources. Right now we have about 12 European nations already receiving energy from this area. We have seen also global air corridor starting flow through this region, given what's happening in Hormuz Strait. Now, if you want to fly from even East Asia to Europe, you have to cross this region. And some people think that this is a temporary phenomenon, which is not, because when the companies discover that this area is better for business, it's shorter distance, as well as it's more profitable, and you have access to the energy proximity in the area, we will see that most of the businesses that came to this region will stay on and develop basically connectivity. This region is also investing a lot in terms of developing themselves. Economic growth in this region on average is about 5 to 8%, which is an emerging region, which fast-growing populations as well, which is another driver of the economic growth in the region, and keen interest to transform the whole area, which is going to be new investment region. That's why in the US we are also paying close attention to this region. President Trump last year in November hosted the presidents of these countries in the White House, and hopefully in September we'll see Korea actually hosting another engagement with the Central Asian leaders in September basically. And this region basically will be fueling energy growth globally, but also we see a huge interest from US data companies, chip companies, who are trying to come in this region and develop the connectivity. We are also talking about a particular project that's under the Caspian Sea, overseas. Since most of the conversation this morning has been on the AI and connectivity, there will be a Trans-Caspian cable, data cable, that will be built under the Caspian, which will be connecting basically east to west data connectivity, which is a big interest for global companies to engage with this region. I think that not only US has a big interest in this area. We have China very much interested, because China already holds a very big competitive edge in terms of critical minerals, and seeing this region in the close geography, they are very interested to access the resources of the region. But also we see Russia trying to hold on to this space, because it has been part of Soviet Union for a long time. We see players, Gulf countries, are very interested in developing projects in the region. You see also EU is trying to become a player. What these countries are trying to do is trying to make sure that they don't replace one colonial master with another one. So the key goal is to see more diversified investment partners, where I think US and Korea can work together to develop projects in this region, and that will be to the benefit of both nations. I want to also highlight that most of these countries, they are eager to develop their economies, but Korea has a lot to offer in that perspective, in terms of industrial base that Korea has. Korea's expertise in shipment, Korea's expertise in developing cables, and also Korea's expert in terms of becoming emerging nation to become a developed nation. That's another area that we can share with this region.
Well said. Indeed, these two regions, Caspian region and Central Asian region, as a one package, it really presents huge opportunity for South Korea. In terms of, again, as Afghan mentioned, not only in terms of a pure trade and investment, a conventional way, but many other areas of cooperation, including infrastructure and energy development that includes oil and gas. It happens to be all the more relevant now because of what's happening in the Middle East. Now, I know Koreans visit Central Asia quite often, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. There are three other Central Asian countries, quickly, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, and what am I missing? Turkmenistan.
Yes.
But I think Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, they are very much well known to Korean audience. People go there for tourism and everything. And also in the Caspian side, there's Azerbaijan, a country called Georgia, Republic of Georgia. I happen to note that, Andrew, you actually spent some years there studying as well. So Georgia is not a foreign nation. Azerbaijan is not a foreign nation. I think this is a truly kind of emerging new opportunities for South Korea and strategic engagement playground for potentially United States and South Korea can go together. Now, you already talked about this region, again, as I echoed, as an opportunity zone, but what specific areas and what kind of Korean companies actually already into the market, as far as you know?
So already we know that some Korean companies are doing business in Kazakhstan, in Uzbekistan, in Azerbaijan. We know Samsung has an engagement with the region, but also in terms of urban development in Alatau city in Kazakhstan, we have Korean engagement. We also have airport development project that in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, we have Korean company engagement. But the opportunities are much wider. As we see that the horizon is expanding in this region, I will see that there will be more opportunities to engage. Again, I think that AI technology will be more important down the road. Energy security has been very important, will stay important. We see that with the crisis in Hormuz Straits, how it is important to have diversified supply of energy for a industrial developed country. We have seen Germany facing similar challenge. Now Germany is also receiving natural gas from the Caspian. Europe, when Russian invasion of Ukraine started, Europe decided to diversify away from Russian gas and oil. And now we see that two important players are stepping in. That's Caspian and the United States, with given the amount of the energy production increase in the United States. So I see that not only technology sector, we have infrastructure development area that the Korean companies can engage. We also have air traffic, airport development that we can see Korean companies engage. Basically, the key goal for these countries is to develop their resources, get better connection with the global markets, and also develop partnerships that have diversified structure, that are not creating another dependency, economic dependency for these countries. And in that perspective, they reach out to US, they reach out to European countries, they also reach out to Gulf. But I think we also expect Korea to step in this region.
You mentioned this earlier, Afghan. Many European countries,
yes,
since the war in Ukraine, they are having some energy issues, obviously. And this over-reliance on Russian gas and Russian energy resource. I don't have to name the countries, but it's been very obvious. And you kind of mentioned that, right now, the region, probably Azerbaijan and some other countries, including Kazakhstan, they are becoming an alternative source for energy supply. Could you elaborate that a bit more?
Yeah, I want to perhaps emphasize that part once again. For example, British company, BP, an oil major,
British Petroleum,
have been invested in the Caspian now about 30 years. And successfully, and contract sanctity has been observed by the countries there. So it already creates a positive energy investment climate in the region. Now we also see that same company actually now moving into Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, basically connecting this vast energy resource with the European consumption. So I think the interest in the energy security area will be significant from Europe, because for over 30 years, we have never seen any of the countries in the region using energy as a source of basically blackmail, as a foreign policy tool, but rather a pragmatic partnership where they contribute to the energy diversification of the European countries. So I think it also creates more supplies into global market, frees up some supplies that can go to other parts of the world. So we have a common interest in terms of making sure that we have Caspian resources flowing to the West.
I think the keywords you use, these two words, programmatic partnership, I think that really means here very relevant. And I'm glad to note that your wonderful work in Washington, D.C., Caspian Policy Center, it gets attention not only from the Trump administration itself, but other countries, other governments at the same time. And your upcoming event in June, Washington, you will feature very high senior level government officials from the White House, and also your ongoing, very notable engagement in different parts of the Europe, UK and Germany. I think that's very notable. And I hope that our audience, at least given our limited time today, maybe not fully, but at least see these two regions, Caspian region and then Central Asia as an opportunity zone, as a combined region. It's also notable, you mentioned, in September, did you say South Korea will host the presidents and leaders of Central Asia, 5 Central Asia? Is that true? Yeah, okay. And my point is that, why then do you think that South Korea has been conceived and then welcomed as a preferred partner in Central Asia and increasingly in Caspian policy, Caspian region? Why South Korea is preferred partner increasingly welcomed?
I think one is South Korea's close relationship with a trusted partner, that's the United States. That's one angle. Second, it's seen as not a colonial power in the region, so very welcome engagement with Korea. And also South Korea's impressive record of economic development and transformation. That tells that countries can, to a certain extent, replicate some of the things that Korea achieved. But also, in many ways, on geopolitical level, the region faces, to a certain extent, similar threats in terms of challenges, I would say, that are faced by South Korea as well. So I think this is a important example to follow, and I see that there is a high chance of success in Korea and region's relationship.
I really want to echo your points, very practical points, because it's one thing that we talk about, ideas. Again, at the beginning, I highlighted ideas and institutions and individuals, but how do we really realize these ideas through institutions and individuals? I think that's the key challenge, whether AI or energy or any other business.
So I saw 4 pillars of declared South Korea Central Asia partnership. Partnership, peace, prosperity, and people-to-people interaction. I think we have to forge our forces in all these 4 areas, basically. And I would say that act now, think long-term. Because, for example, for United States, we don't buy oil and gas from the region. Our allies are receiving. But we think in the long run that increases our security. For South Korea as well, I think engagement in this region raises South Korea's own standing, but also I think the key is seizing the already existing opportunities is very key. Identifying what we can do, what our strengths are, and how we can contribute to the development in the region. That's the key part, and that starts with starting exploring and looking the ways we can do the collaboration.
Yesterday's reality was when people think about these 2 regions, Central Asia and Caspian region, they somehow look down on these regions as a less developed kind of areas. But I think that now it's a totally different ballgame. This is really an opportunity we cannot really treat lightly, and it's good that United States is really much needed paying much needed attention to these regions. And as I understand, you have meetings with the senior government officials, as well as corporate leaders here in Korea, and then your next stop is Japan?
Japan, yes.
Yeah.
And I think this is an important window of opportunity for all of us. Again, this window of opportunity opened with the Russia-Ukraine war, when we started thinking about alternative ways of supply chain, which is a key word, I think, on this. And now that is even getting more solidified what's happening with the Hormuz Strait events. This area becoming an area of stable, practical collaboration space, also supported by the enduring peace that's being established in the region.
Great.
So we have seen President Trump's initiative with Azerbaijan and Armenia signing peace agreement in Washington, and also trip corridor, Trump route for peace and prosperity, which is going to be developed in the Caucasus.
Great.
So it presents a big opportunity. There is a big political will, and for the region, branding and positioning is to a certain extent is done. What we need to do now is practically doing projects in the region.
Indeed.
Yes.
I think we hope that we invited your interest in these two regions, and obviously we'll have a greater conversations as we go. But again, thank you, Afghan, for sharing your insights and perspectives. Yes. And I know this is not going to be your first and last trip to Korea and Japan. And for our audience, again, the world is really big and evolving, and I think that it's always good to see kind of new engagement opportunity from especially private sector and entrepreneurs and others. So we hope that it presented a unique angle, not like, you know, some foreign sci-fi concept or anything like that. So we do hope that you enjoyed this special dialogue. Thank you so much for your attention, and thank you again, Afghan.
Thank you.
Thank you both. I think based on my experiences and work in the South Caucasus and Central Asia, I can definitely confirm that this is a region to watch. Thank you to all the speakers today. This has been a very rich and thought-provoking session this morning. It has given us a deeper understanding not only of the changing geopolitical landscape after Iran, but also of the industrial implications of physical AI. We are clearly living through a period of profound change. But after listening to today's experts, I am more convinced than ever that this is not simply a moment of disruption. It is also a moment of repositioning. And it's an opportunity to build the muscle for future relevance. That, in many ways, is where reinvention really begins, in recognizing that the world has shifted and that strategy, capability, and ambition must shift with it. For Korea, as a manufacturing powerhouse with enormous potential, that creates real opportunity. I also believe it creates real space for deeper collaboration with Europe. Personally, I look forward to exploring those possibilities further when I'm back home from this conference. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the plenary session of K.E.Y Platform 2026. We may be living through a period of complexity and uncertainty, volatility, but we may also be at the beginning of a much larger transformation. This is why we must continue asking better questions, seeking deeper insight, and remaining open to where the next shifts may lead us. Over the next 2 days, we will find those insights across a wide range of K.E.Y Platform sessions. Now, after lunch, we will go deeper into topics that are central to Korea's future strategy, including AI, science and technology, Northern Europe and Japan. Tomorrow, plenary session 2 will focus on the biotechnology industry for Korea and will be followed by a special session on space. I hope your experience of K.E.Y Platform will be intellectually rewarding and genuinely inspiring. Thank you so very much for your attention. My name is Andrew Robel, Chief Reinvention Officer at Reinvantage. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you.